There ain't a podcast that's flyer. You are now tuned in to Direct Misfire. Benson, Hugh, and Sellick. Tell everyone to tune in. Let's roll the dice. Let me show you what we doing. A fantasy war game. Play it smart and you win. What you know about the crystal pen of retribution? Heroes, giants, and knights galore. It's an adventure. This is Kings of War. Let's go.
Rats are everywhere. Rats are vicious, hard creatures that can survive in the harshest of conditions, living in filth and eating worse. They thrive in adversity. The darkest, most miserable places in the world are the domain of rats. If ever a race was destined for slavery, ideally suited for the despair and brutal life it offered, it was the vermin. Bazak Ratkin, Overmaster of the Gift Bears of Zarak, wanted more. More work, more blood, more pain, more productivity, more sacrifice, more slaves. A seemingly endless supply simply wasn't enough. Bazak began to experiment. Consumed by his madness, he locked himself away while he worked in a frenzy on his project rarely seen. Strange, chittering screeches and agonized wails came from behind the locked doors of Bazak's laboratory. After a while, Bazak was forgotten, and a new Overmaster took his place.
Hello champs, and welcome once again to another Direct Misfire Army Review. Joining me today, as always, is Sellick.
Hey.
And Hugh. As we examine and scrutinize the Ratkin army list. So pull up a seat, grab a drink, and let's get into it.
Before we go any further though, Benson, I think we should probably address why we're doing the Ratkin over any other army as our first 3rd edition army review.
Yes, why is that?
Because, of course, it's the choice of the people. We had 48 votes.
Where was this? Across Facebook and Twitter?
So everything was fed from Twitter and Facebook all to the one location this time. So it was a little bit easier for me.
Nice.
Awesome. So quite a lot of votes and ended up with a pretty even spread of every other army. But then Ratkin easily in the lead with 17% of the vote. You boy.
I suspect trickery there. But anyway, it's done.
Can't trust a rat.
Okay, let's get straight into it because it could be a lengthy episode as most of our army reviews are. So we'll start off with the Ratkin. Obviously they are evil little buggers, and their special upgrade is the Plague Pots, which is one of the best special upgrades in the game, I feel. But basically once per game, at the start of your turn, you get to choose to give the unit Ensnare and Stealthy special rules until the start of the next turn. So it's just a one-use item, pop it at the start of your turn, and that unit gets Ensnare and Stealthy, which is fantastic.
So it's a 15-point item. Most of the infantry units have it as an option for a 15-point upgrade, except for the Wretches, which are like crappy slave dudes. They don't
The
get
rubbish rats. Spendy rats.
So it's nowhere near an army-wide special rule. You're likely to have it on 1 or 2 units, if at all, unlike a lot of other army-wide special rules like, say, I don't know, Pathfinder. You think this is better than Pathfinder? I don't think so.
So it's not quite an army-wide special rule because in version 2 they had that sort of thing, but in version 3, like the Herd or Force of Nature, the Herd has the Frenzied Otter upgrade instead of Pathfinders, and that's just it's like a pseudo-vicious. So the Ratkin have Plague Pots instead for their upgrade.
Yeah, that's it. So it's their army-wide upgrade, I guess, rather than special rule, isn't it? And then if they have an army-wide special rule, which they sort of do, it's rallying. So it's mainly just on the infantry hordes and a couple of other like MISC special units. They've got that rallying 1.
So they've almost got 2 special rules, don't they?
Yeah, which a lot of the armies do have something along those lines, like they've got that little upgrade friend and then the rallying thing. For the Ratkin, like it's deceptive to say that like it's across every army. Like you can pretty comfortably say in the Pathfinder example, nearly every unit has Pathfinder. I don't know if there's 1 or 2 exceptions, Benson. Maybe there is. But
Yeah, there are. Yep.
Yeah, thought there was 1 or 2, but for the Ratkin ones, they're specifically on their infantry units.
Okay, so speaking of infantry, The first cab off the rank are just your standard warriors. So these are speed 6, melee 5, defense 4 infantry fellas. No range on there. They come in regiments and hordes. Unit strength 2 and 3 for each of those. 12 attacks for the regiment, 25 for the horde. And then nerve is 12-14 for the regiment and 19-21 for the horde. Pretty cheap, 85 points and 145 respectively. Like we were saying, the horde has rallying 1 and you can give them plague pots. But other than that, they're pretty bland. No crushing, no fancy wild charge, just melee 5, defense 4.
Yeah, if you compare like Ratkin units in general, and this is a good example, against sort of, your bog standard sort of human equivalent or what have you, then you'll find that often you're 1 or 2 nerve down, depending on the army you're comparing with, of course, and the melee is crap. All the base rats are melee 5+. In other words, they're
Kind of like goblins.
decent amount crapper. Yeah, that's a good point. They're more like goblins, but they are quite cheap, of course. So this is your cheapest unlock, coming in at 85 points. Not quite as good as like a 70-point unlock in the form of the undead sort of zombie kind of characters, but
that's
not
undead.
too shabby either. 85 points for an unlock is not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you give them the plague pots or do you just run them vanilla?
No.
Okay. And then
It's a good question, actually. I don't think it's as simple as just no. I think it's not like a high priority item, but if you had a few points left over or something, you might do. They have a much more effective use if you do give them the plague pots, because what you can do is sort of in that, hanging out on the flank unit, regiment versus regiment kind of scenario, which is all too common, where you just kind of float around trying to get objectives and stuff, because obviously they're not going to kill much with 12 attacks on 5 up to hit. But giving them the plague pots gives you the option of sort of whacking them in a forest and sort of daring people to charge you. And it can hold what you usually find with plague pots. It's probably worth addressing them now, is that what they really do is they say once per game, no one will charge you. So that's what they actually sort of effectively do on the tabletop, depending on how you line things up and stuff. I mean, if you're massively overwhelmed already and you're just going to get charged and taken off, then I guess they don't do anything in that instance. But more often than not, in sort of a similar points of facing off against one another, you pop the plague pots, your opponent's very heavily motivated to not charge in, because if they do, of course, very good chance you won't break the unit because of that ensnare, especially if they're impeded, because it does stack with impeded, unlike phalanx and things like that. So if they're at a -2, and that's what you kind of try to line it up as the Ratkin player, then it's an obvious trap, I suppose. No one wants to charge into that usually.
Having played Ratkin a fair bit, have you found that the stealthy is an element, or is it all about the ensnare?
It's all about the ensnare.
Okay, so there's never been any situations where you think, all right, I'm going to get shot a whole bunch next turn, I better pop the pots.
In all my third ed games with them so far, there's only been one scenario where I've actually used it for stealthy, when there was a couple of war machines facing down a fairly critical unit, which I was just trying to hang out an objective for. But that's a very rare thing.
Because we don't really face massive gunline armies, so any shooting is kind of a bit meh.
There's been a few times where it's been kind of a bonus, like you've got 2 large hordes kind of walking at each other, right?
Yeah.
And you're in that position where you're like, whoever charges first is going to get a significant advantage. So you sort of move up into charge range, pop the pots, and then your opponent's kind of in this situation where they're like, damned if they do, damned if they don't. If they charge, they get the ensnare, which will probably save the horde that they're charging against, and then they'll cop the counter charge. But if they don't charge, they'll just be charged. But in one of those sort of mixed arms kind of lists that's got a reasonable amount of shooting in it as well, that choice is even harder, because it's like, if I don't charge, then I get to shoot the unit, but now they've got stealthy, so it's, you know. But the thing is, the problem with stealthy, unlike ensnare, really, is that you've got different options of what to shoot. It's not like I charge this unit or no unit. It's I can shoot maybe half a dozen different options. So if 1 or 2 units has stealthy, they would shoot the ones that don't have stealthy. So that's why Night Stalkers, the whole army has stealthy. It comes in handy all the time and it's relevant. But anyone who's played with like 1 or 2 units that have stealthy, they'll probably know that, it doesn't really come up.
Yeah, I think stealthy in 3rd edition so far, in our meta that we've played around or been around, has lost its value a little bit. I just don't think that we see the big shooty armies, as Benson said earlier.
Yeah, and Ratkin are kind of quite a hoardy army, as you've already can tell probably just from analysing these sort of army-wide rules. Like rallying is only on a horde to begin with, so you're motivated to take hordes. Plague Pots obviously gains a lot of value when you use it on a horde. So if you want to be a horde army, you're going to have a lot of targets. So again, that devalues stealthy a bit, while as compared to like a super elite army where they've got one really juicy target, and then if that unit's stealthy, obviously that carries a bit more weight.
So I think to really address the warriors, we probably have to look at the spear warriors, which is like a slight upgrade with it at the same time. So spear warriors, they come in, same speed 6, still melee 5, no range obviously, defense 4 still. The only difference here is that the regiment unit strength goes up to 3 in the regiment, and the horde goes up to 4, and the attacks respectively go to 15 and 30. And the nerve stays exactly the same, so 12, 14, and 19, 21. The points go up by about 20 points, I think it is, for the regiment, so 105 and 180 for the horde. So they've got all exactly the same options, just slightly higher unit strength. They get the phalanx rule, still get access to the plague pots.
Yeah, so this being our first Third Ed Army review, this will be the first time we've come across it, on the podcast, of course, but I'm sure virtually every listener is aware of this kind of comparison, because I don't want to say most armies, but certainly a very large number of armies have this kind of bog standard warrior unit, and then you've got your spear upgrade. In Ratkin, I think it's really good. I think it's really, really good, and the main reason is that 20-point increase takes them over 100, and when you go over 100 on a regiment, typically you go up to that unit strength 3. So the unit strength feels free when you look at the comparison, because 3 attacks and phalanx, probably worth the 20 points. In a lot of scenarios, they hold a flank significantly better against obviously cavalry and flyers. They have that extra sort of tool in their arsenal. And even the 3 extra attacks, even at 5s to hit, it gives them something. It means that if you're flanking or something, you're somewhat of a threat sometimes, I guess. You can get like Bane Charted in the flank, and then sometimes you do something. I find that the poxy little 15 attacks sometimes does a little bit more than I think it's going to. Just the extra weight of dice, sometimes you spike a bit more and that kind of thing. So that 20 points feels worth it anyway, but then plonking on a unit strength is awesome. So really like the 105-point regiment.
Yep. So in saying that, how do you look at warriors now? If we go back to their regiments, so minus 20 points just for the regiment side for the sake of this convo. Negative 3 attacks, same nerve, plus 1 unit strength, plus 20 points. Do you take the regiment of spear warriors every day of the week over the warriors?
Almost every day except twice on Sunday, because I think that the regiment, especially when you're comparing regiments, a horde of warriors strikes me as almost completely useless. As we get down to the other regiments, you'll kind of see, I don't really understand where they fit in. A horde of spear warriors has more of a use. You've got this big ensnare block, relatively cheap at 180 points. But even at the regiment level, I tend to prefer the spears these days after experimenting a bit with both. And I think the only reason I'd ever take warriors is I just really need a cheap unlock. They are that 20 points less, and I'm really tight for points at the end of my list. So a handful of times I have actually replaced a spear warriors unit with a warriors unit when I'm trying to trim a few points here or there. That's about it, really.
Because I think for the regiments, because it's 12-14, you might go up to 13-15. If they're getting attacked with defense 4, I feel like they're just going to disappear. I mean, playing as goblins, that's just what happens to my regiment. So I'd rather just save 20 points per regiment if they're just going to get charged and die.
I understand that, but against non-cavalry, definitely agree with that. But if the cavalry are not going to be impeded, I just find I agree with that in principle, and I agree with that generally on paper, but I find in practice on the board, I'm so frequently having these regiments of cavalry that are hanging out on the flanks or whatever. Having phalanx really gives the unit a purpose. Not having phalanx is just they're a minor roadblock for the unit to go through. Well, there's the difference of phalanx when you say no thunderous charge and -1 to hit, it actually changes that equation completely such that they actually hold most of the time, particularly if they're inspired.
Mm-hmm.
It's no sure thing. A really hardcore cavalry unit might still go through you, but statistically speaking, you should probably hold once. And that holding once on the flank is a huge difference. And your opponent knows it as well. They're they've got because they've got phalanx, if I charge them, I probably won't go through them. So now I've got this weird dilemma where there's only a 100-point unit. And often they might just avoid it and go into the center with the cavalry or something instead, in which case I think the unit's achieved its goal. It's got 3 unit strength marching up the board. And in a lot of scenarios, that's great if they're avoiding that then happy days. When your opponent has no cavalry and no flyers, if you knew that ahead of time, I would agree with Benson. Just go the Warriors because bugger it.
Do you think that increases the value of inspiring heroes that we'll discuss later?
Yeah, inspiring's pretty damn critical in any army, but I think especially Ratkin, they don't have a lot of speed for the most part. They do have a few fast units, but mostly they're just movement 6 sloggers. And any ogre player will tell you that when you've got this sort of middling to low nerve and you are very likely to receive a charge before you can get busy, maybe even several charges, you really need that inspiring. It's very critical for this army.
Okay, cool.
All right, well, I guess it's my turn, and I get to move on to my favourite infantry unit in the army, which is
Scurriers.
the shock troops. Scurriers said no one ever. We'll get to them in due course. That should be amusing. But your shock troops are your other sort of unit that you're tossing up really between these three when you're talking about getting your unlocks for the rest of your army. For the most part, these are the 3 units you're looking at. So the shock troops are your better version of base infantry, speed 6, melee 4, defense 4, so they're not melee 5 critically.
Mm-hmm.
They have still defense 4 though, so pretty bad defense. But on the troop, you can get a troop of them, which is unusual for Ratkin. Don't really know why you'd ever take it, but unit strength 1, 12 attacks, 9-11 nerve, 85 points. So it's kind of a cheap chaffy unit, but when you compare it to a regiment of warriors, which is an unlock for the same price and a bit more nerve, don't really get it, but whatever. You've also got the regiment option, which is unit strength 3, 15 attacks, 13, 15 nerve, so you get 1 extra nerve over a warrior, or spear warrior for that matter. And in the horde, which is the way you're going to take them nearly every time, they come in at unit strength 4, they have 30 attacks, and nerve 20/22, which for a Ratkin is a very brave. So that's 220 points for the horde. And honestly, after playing Ratkin for some years now and trying the different permutations of these units, I don't understand really why you're ever taking anything other than the horde on these guys. They are a horde unit. You might as well just put them on a horde base to begin with if you want to.
Yeah.
Just thinking of maths, if you took 2 troops, would that be a target to get shot at, or do you think they're not that? I mean, they're going to be inspired, but if you take 2 troops...
Yeah, to an extent, they're a target to get shot at. They do have Crushing 1. I forgot to mention that, or didn't get to it yet. And the horde, of course, has Rallying 1. So in a troop, yeah.
2 troops charging units, 24 attacks.
Yeah, sure. If you manage to orchestrate that somehow.
For quite a bit less than a horde as well.
It's still 6 less than a horde, yeah. And not many less points. You're already at 170 for 2 troops. And they just die to a stiff breeze. Nerve 9-11, defense 4.
Probably 10-12.
I mean, when you compare it to anything else around that points cost, because we do have, as we'll get to, several other units around that 85. If you want like cheap chaff, whatever else, you either get a warrior, which is tougher for an unlock for the bigger footprint, or you get one of the other kind of more chaffy units. So, yeah, you leave that troop at home, I think.
I tend to agree. I think the way that you're sort of thinking at the moment, Benson, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think if you just spammed a whole heap of regiments, so cheap warriors or equivalents, and then you chucked in a couple of shock troops, so all of a sudden they just can't possibly kill all of your units, and then use your shock troops in the flanks to try and get 24 attacks or so to really start to knock them about. I think they would just end up targeting the only units that could actually impact it with flame weapons or ranged attacks to take them out. So I don't know. I think it could work, yeah.
There could be a niche option against armies that have no shooting, but 9-11 nerve, yeah, they're not lasting, and they're not quite as mobile as other units of similar value if you do want a cheap unit. They do hit reasonably hard, though. I don't know, maybe there's a niche use of them, but wouldn't bother mounting your hardcore storm vermin models or whatever models you're using to represent the shock troops. Wouldn't bother putting them on a troop base if I were you. The regiment's not bad. It's just that the horde fits such a role, as we get to in the rest of the list as well. You need a unit that can take a punch because, again, you are a reasonably slow army that has to rely on counterpunching a lot of the time. So you need a unit that can take a punch, which this unit's the best unit in the list for that, and also dish out a punch, which they still do. So they used to have Elite and Vicious in the previous edition, and a lot of people are just discarding them now as nowhere near as good anymore. That's complete rubbish because they've got 30 attacks versus 25. So yes, they've lost Elite and Vicious. They've got 5 more attacks. It's almost a wash, statistically speaking. They were slightly better on the aggression before, but you can still give them Elite or Vicious or whatever else. And the thing that I love about them as well now is that they've got that little bit of extra versatility because you can give them a Plague Pots. And you can also pay 25 points on the horde or 15 on the regiment to give them heavy halberds, which gives them phalanx. So they've already got lots of attacks. I quite like one of each. Phalanx and plague pots is an option too, but it's quite a lot of points. Even before a magic item at that point, you're looking at 260 points.
40 points, isn't it?
Yeah, 40 points to give them both. Which for me, just when you're coming down to refining those last few points on the list, I find it a bit hard to fit it in there. But I find in most of my lists that I've had significant success with, it's, due to that core of 2 hordes of shock troops. And I tend to give 1 heavy halberds and 1 plague pots. But that's in part just because of the miniatures I've got. Because I've got one, unit of sort of plague monkey looking dudes who fit the plague pots thing really well. And then a unit of storm vermins with big old halberds. So, of course, I'm going to give them heavy halberds. So I admit that the miniature selection I've got is a big part of what persuades me to do that. But having a huge, big horde of phalanx ratties is pretty hard to deal with.
Yeah, still 30 attacks on the horde, hitting on 4s, so 50-50, with crushing strength 1 as a base with no items at all. That's not rubbish. And I think that this list needs something that can actually hurt, or else you'll just end up just wiping all over it. So
yeah, and Bane Chant's readily available in the list. So I find that and Bane Chant 3 as well is readily available, which is very reliable. So when you've got Nerve 2022 and you boost that up a couple of points with rallying, which is the reality of how it ends up working, and you're sitting around with like this 22, 24 nerve unit. Yes, your defense 4, but you've also got either phalanx or plague pots, which can really throw a spanner in the works.
Yeah.
There's very, very few units in the game that can charge you and reliably take you off, or even very few 2 units in the game, really, if you've got plague pots off. Then they take the charge and charge back with 30 attacks at Crush 2. Once you sort of have your nuance in your army to make sure that these sort of combinations work out for you, then a center of a couple of hordes of shock troops will do you well in pretty well every list.
Just jumping back before we get to the next unit, we should make mention that the warriors have an expendable keyword. The other keywords don't really matter at the moment, but expendable is used later on.
Good point. Yeah, if you're going heavy on brood mothers, then warriors get a bit of a boost over spear warriors on account of that expendable keyword. Yeah.
The other unit with expendable are the wretches, which are an irregular infantry. Speed 6, melee 5, defense 2, so quite a bit weaker than the others. These guys only come in hordes and legions, so for the horde you get your 3 unit strength of 25 attacks, 18-21, so the range for wavering is a little bit bigger than the others, but they're only 115 points for that horde. The legions, unit strength 4, 30 attacks, 24-27 on the nerve for 170, and they have no special rules. Other than that expendable keyword, it's not really special, but it's something to make note for the brood mothers.
Yeah, really, they just miss out on the special rules because they don't have the horde. They don't have the rallying. Sorry, they do have the horde. They don't have the rallying on the horde, is what I meant to say. And they don't have plague pots as an option, or any other options for that matter.
But a 115-point horde to soak up some damage is pretty good.
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, they compete with that 85-point warrior regiment, or 145 if you want the horde of warriors, I suppose, and the 105-point spear warrior regiment. So there are a few more points for that horde. They do have the higher nerve, of course, because they're a horde, and more attacks, but their attacks still suck. And their defense 2, the difference between defense 4 and 2 can be significant. Obviously, it depends on the matchup. Sometimes I like to have the wretches face off against things like dragons and stuff, oddly enough. Things with relatively few attacks, but a lot of crushing. That's where you want your wretches versus your warriors and stuff. Because defense 2, it's like, who cares? Anything kills me.
It's just wasted, yep.
And then that way they can take that charge and survive 1 round. That's kind of all you ever want your wretches to do. They're not great. They definitely took a pretty big hit this edition, but I think they're appropriately pointed and they fit sort of in that in-between role. Yeah, they don't kill anything generally. They can, if they get shot at, they die really fast. A lot of people don't shoot the hordes because they sort of think, oh no, I'll shoot like a higher value target, and they use their like bows or something on your monster or some equivalent thereof. But I think actually, as much as I don't want to tell people this, I think putting a couple of volleys into the wretches is pretty worthwhile because they're defense 2, so nearly everything that hits counts as a wound, even with no piercing at all. Then when you do charge them, they're just gone versus virtually
helps
anything.
late game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just getting like, it's remarkably easier to shoot them like with like 2 regiments of archers, and then they're just sitting on like 10 or 12 wounds, and you charge them with anything and they die. So yeah, that's the anti-wretch tactic. You could say that absorbing fire is good, but my problem with wretches at the most part in this edition, especially in some small board games if you're playing on a smaller board. And I've definitely felt the pinch of this recently. Having a horde footprint on a unit that's so garbage is tricky. But at the same time, I think it's good that you can't take a regiment anymore, because it was kind of lame how dirt cheap those regiments were. You kind of have to pay the price. The price that you pay that's not as obvious on paper is that enormous footprint for a unit that does 3/5 of nothing. Yeah.
Alrighties.
Where do you deploy them? So I know that we're just about to wrap up the infantry, but if you have a look at the wretches and we go the hordes and legions, and assuming that we've already thought about our deployment here, do you deploy these on the flank or up in the middle, or what would you do, Hugh?
Yeah, on the flank generally. Maybe I need to try them in the centre every now and again. If I took an army that didn't have 2 hordes of shock troops, which tend to be so good at holding your centre, not only because they're tough and they've got good counterpunch, but also because they rally one another, which is really critical to making sure they stick around. If I had an army that didn't have 2 hordes of shock troops in the middle, I might consider throwing these guys in the middle every now and again. But ultimately, they're there to absorb 1 charge and to try to sit on objectives and use unit strength.
Okay.
That's their purpose. So they do that better on a flank, just bothering people. And with 25 attacks on the horde, I've never tried the Legion. It just seems it seems like they fulfill the same role, but for significantly more points and only 5 more attacks. But a horde with 25 attacks, if you do whack them on the flank and you're moving your army up, your opponent can't really completely ignore them, because if they charge something in the flank, they've still got 50 attacks. They're crappy slave attacks, but there's 50 of them. And if you throw a Baneshan in there, then all of a sudden they're starting to look pretty scary. So your opponent's kind of forced to put something into them. And flank units are likely to have lower numbers of attacks. People love their fast, heavy-hitting flank kind of units. So against a lot of armies, having a unit of this on the flank is quite a useful little deterrent.
Okay.
I have an idea of putting a horde of wretches behind your main battle line and popping maybe 2 broodmothers on either side and using that wretch horde as purely a battery for the broodmother drain life ability.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool idea. The list definitely sort of indicates that that's a cool thing to do. You can also do it with a unit of warriors for a few less points, because you don't actually take a nerve roll when you get hit with the broodmother stuff.
The issue is with the warriors is their defense 4, so you need to still damage them. And if you're hitting on defense 4, so you got to roll 3s, whereas the wretches are defense 2, so just about everything will be converting into life.
Good point. Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to try it sometime. I've never tried it. I have tried the broodmother in bits and pieces. We'll get to her in due course, I suppose.
Drain life 20 seems very scary. After facing Morgoth's Drain life 9 and thinking how annoying that is, Drain life 20 would be great.
But it's not Drain life 20, it's heal 20 at that point. You're not draining anyone's life, you're just healing, because you're only hitting your own unit. So it's not at all like Morgoth, who, when he goes in and does 4 wounds to something, that's an 8-point swing. You know, it's 4 damage to whatever you're fighting, and it's healing 4. This is just a big heal.
Heal 20 is ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. It's a huge amount of points that are doing absolutely stone nothing else, but it is still an interesting idea. You should be able to just look at any unit that's got damage on it and more or less take that damage off. So it is appealing, even with this double shock troop center kind of thing I've been talking about. Yeah, I'd love to try it actually. Just wretches and double broodmother behind them, see how it goes. It does seem like quite a lot of points to achieve that, but sometimes that could be really worthwhile.
An interesting one. I could see it backfiring as well. You could spend all of these points and then a double combo charge and it will just be wiped off in a turn. So
that's it. That's the problem with over-investing in heal, right?
Yeah.
Especially on units that don't have high defense. Part of the reason that the Empire of Dust are such a pain in the ass to deal with is all their heal. But then they also have units with really high nerve and really high defense, while as
and fearless.
Ratkin have low defense across the board and below average nerve. So I feel like you're mainly using that on your shock troop hordes to heal them up. After they receive a charge from something, heal them back up to full, and then they're still a fighting force. And that seems really useful and kind of scary to me. I can't really think of another unit in this entire army that I'd want to dedicate a significant amount of resources to try to heal, except possibly tunnel runners as we get to them, because I quite like that unit.
What about the shock troops that you've spent 300 points on for all the upgrades and brewer strength?
Yeah, it's a shitload of eggs in one basket, but it could really work. It could be cool. I like the idea.
All them eggs, all that basket.
Yeah, you're almost not a horde army anymore, are you? You're like got a super elite core of super rats. I don't hate it. It's cool. It's a cool.
Speaking
idea.
of super rats, we're talking about ranged infantry. Let's just jump into the best ones here. Who wants to carry on with the scurriers?
I will. Scurriers or the claw shots?
No, we'll go with scurriers first. We'll do
We'll
save
do
the worst for last.
Trolling.
All right, so speed 6, melee 4, range 4, defense 3. The troops, unit strength 1 with 8 attacks. The nerves, 9, 11 at 115 points, sorry. The regiments, unit strength 2, attacks 10, 13, 15 with 155 points. Their special rules, however, are duelist, scout, and vicious. And they've got blight throwers at 18 inches, obviously, with steady aim. They've also got access to the plague bots. What do you think?
What do you do with them? I don't understand what their point is.
I don't think anyone knows.
They're hot garbage. There's so many points. This would have to be a contender for the worst unit in the game, I reckon.
They're not even stealthy.
Because I've only got a troop. I'd actually love to try a regiment sometime for a bit of fun. I might even try it on UB or something with some of you guys just to try out a unit. From time to time. I have tried out the troop and it's exactly as bad as it looks. It's just a lot of points. You're paying all these points for these different abilities. Vicious, scout, duelist. They don't go well together. Duelist on a movement 6 unit? Like how are you going to, on a regiment or troop for that matter, who's going to put their mage or something in front of your regiment within charge range for them to go in and hit? They don't even have Pathfinder. So even though they've got Scout, if you want to move up close to things and throw your 18-inch really garbage, no-piercing shooting attacks at people, then who's going to be dopey enough to put a mage in front of them? Even if they do, and you've got to charge through terrain, which you probably will have to have somehow got yourself in that position, then they're going to be -1 to hit. And even with Duelist, they're still not going to kill whatever they're charging. Like it almost has to be a really crap hero in the open, standing 12 inches in front of your shooting unit. Like, oh God, it's just an absurd scenario.
And they're irregular, so they're not unlocking either.
Yeah, 2 regiments with like an assassin nearby. It'd be great if the assassin had... sorry, they're not called assassin anymore. They're called master scurriers. It'd be awesome if, like in a lot of other lists, he gave inspiring just for scurriers. But he doesn't have that, but that would be a cool little fluffy thing. They do nothing.
Their vicious works on their ranged attacks, so that's something.
That's true. They can re-roll to wounds on a roll of a 1. They don't have piercing, though.
Yeah, but they've only got 8 and 10 shots. So
Yep.
Like they're hitting roughly 50% of the time. Math hammer doesn't work. But still then, it's like 4 and maybe 5. It's hits.
I'd say not even 50 because they don't ignore cover, they don't move and shoot without penalty, and they've only got that 18-inch range. So you kind of need an ideal scenario for them to be hitting on 4s.
Oh, they got steady aim, so they do move and shoot.
Oh, I apologise. I missed the steady aim.
Yep.
Yeah, so they can move and shoot, which is nice, but...
I mean, having a read of background here, like the description, scurry teams train and act as scouts. They are agile and adept at striking enemy weak points. I mean, Speed 6 doesn't seem any more agile than any other infantry.
If they had Speed 7 nimble for exactly the same price point, you might be like, oh, that's kind of interesting. They might actually get to charge a character from time to time. They might be able to move and then rotate cunningly, use their nimble a bit to shoot something that otherwise wouldn't be shot and put, 1 or 2 wounds on it. But for God's sake, 115 points for a Nerve 911 Defense 3 unit. Or 155 points for a regiment which unlocks nothing, has Nerve 13, 15 and Defense 3. If anyone farts in their general direction, they die. They cost heaps of points and they don't kill anything.
Yeah, I reckon remove Duelist and give them Nimble.
Or stealthy or something. They need, Speed 7 nimble. Get rid of Duelist.
Or just let them unlock or something. So someone can take some sort of theme army where you've got a couple of regiments of scurriers and they're doing nimble, sneaky assassin stuff. And
yeah, if they're supposed to be doing covert operations, give them stealthy.
Oh, they're shocking. Anyway, yep, that's enough about scurriers. They did make... by the way, they were shocking in the last edition and they're cheaper now and they're still shocking.
They're just
nimble.
as bad.
Mm-hmm.
Can't even fix them with artifacts.
No, you don't want to make them any more expensive. They're still Defense 3 potatoes. You're tempted to hide them in terrain, right? To try to protect them because they're so easy to kill and because that's like a scouty, sneaky thing to do.
But they don't have Pathfinder.
Because they don't have Pathfinder, that really screws them. They give, they're going to be a neg 1 to hit because of everything and, they're shit.
Maybe even Strider, so they're not running super fast, but at least they know how to jump twigs.
Strider would be all right. A lot of units, I find, that fit into this kind of scouty kind of category sometimes suffer from, they have a lot of special rules to try to make them into this cool, stealthy, scouty kind of unit. And by the time you pay all the points for those special rules, they're just like a poxy stat line that cost a lot of points. And Scurriers definitely have that problem, but their special rules don't mesh in any kind of useful way, unlike some of the other scouts and things. So leave them at home until they get a buff.
Yeah, particularly when they've got a regular. Like, they just lose value very rapidly.
Damn it, I can't even ally them.
Said no one ever. It's the first time anyone's ever said that. Okay. Claw shots. So another regular unit. Interesting unit. They're a troop of heavy infantry. So they come in at 10 figures in the larger base. And the reason for that is that every man and his dog is going to use Jezzails to represent them, which are on a cavalry base. So 5 wide is a troop. They have melee 5+, who cares? Range 4+, which is awesome. And defense of 5+, which is also kind of awesome. Only nerve 8-10, but every now and again someone sort of sprays in the direction and they don't die just by virtue of that.
Defense 5,
which is kind of nice. But why do you take them? For 95 points, you should think of them as very similar to a war machine, because they've got 5 attacks. They only come in the troop. They hit on a 4, which is great, with a 36-inch range. Even with the all too often stealthy or cover or what have you, still hitting on a 5 with 5 attacks is fairly reliable of getting 1 or 2 through, and pierce 2. So what they do is they reach out and they put 1 or 2 wounds on something really, really, really reliably. So that's great.
And they have unit strength.
And they have unit strength, unlike a war machine, that's correct. So you can, it even says, note, the front rank of models should be represented with large shields, just in case you didn't realise you meant to use Jezzails as this model.
Yeah.
Yeah, they sit on an objective, potentially, unlike a war machine. Pop 1 wound or 2 at range and just finish off those units that probably should have died from a charge and managed to luck out on the nerve roll, or even just over time chipping away 2 or 3 wounds on a dragon or something, or a cavalry unit that your army otherwise has trouble dealing with, and being unit strength at the same time.
How many are we taking? 1 unit, 2 units?
Well, you take as many as you felt like, I guess, but probably 1 or none in my list. I mean, I only have 1, so that sort of makes it a bit biased, I suppose. But yeah, 1's great. I try to fit my 1 unit in most of my lists. I think they're just really useful. I've even had games where they've ended up on a flank and deployment has been such that they kind of don't have that much useful units to shoot, and they just end up moving up the table up to 12 inches a turn, again, unlike a war machine, and just gun up and stand on an objective and then finally like shoot in turn 6 or something, which is fine for 95 points, frankly. That doesn't happen very often. More often I put them in the middle at the very back of my army and just chip away shots. And if your opponent lands behind you with a flyer and they actually go for your claw shots, usually I'm really happy with that scenario, because it brings them out of the main battle line for long enough for that the claw shots feel like they've well and truly made up their points. If they've put like 4 wounds out and then died on turn 3 to some monstrosity of a flyer that costs way more points than them, pretty happy with that result, really. Yeah, claw shots, I rate them.
Piercing arrow, worth?
Yeah.
10 points, reroll that 1 damage.
I actually think rerolled a hit. Yeah.
Never tried it, but don't see why not. Yeah.
Just to make sure, if you're just trying to make that nerve check, that at least something should damage or hit.
I mean, you get about 2 to 3 hits a turn. Obviously 2.5 if you're hitting on 4s, 1 and something if you're hitting on 5s on average. But so then if you do fail to wound, sure. I don't know. It's one of those things like if you've got 10 points left over and nothing better to put it on, and not 15 points because you can probably put plague pots on something, then sure. But keeping him cheap and nasty seems fine to me. You're only likely to re-roll a failed wound 1 to 2 times a battle. So when you think of it that way, it's not great.
All right, so that's all the people on foot, or rat guys on foot. So we've only got 1 proper cavalry option for the Ratkin, and they are the hackpaws. So these are some fairly quick fellas, speed 9 with melee of 4, defense of 4. The troop is just your standard unit strength of 1, 8 attacks, 9/11 nerve at 100 points. And the regiment, 3 unit strength, 16 attacks, 12/14 nerve, and 150 points. These are also equipped with nimble, and they get Thunderous Charge 1, and they're vicious only in melee, which, well, they don't have a ranged attack, so okay. These are very much like the Goblin Fleabag Riders.
Yeah, very, very similar in terms of stats.
Goblins are slightly faster.
And even Thunderous 1 Vicious is similar. The difference between movement 9 and movement 10 is actually very significant, and it does reduce their value versus the Gobbos a little bit. But they're your only fast, relatively cheap unit. I started out with Ratkin taking 2 troops quite regularly.
Mm-hmm.
I never really do that anymore because I never found them to be particularly useful versus other chaff units for a bit less points than they tend to be. The idea of having like potentially 16 attacks in someone's flank or something sounds nice, but they're so frequently impeded. They're one of those units that if they are affected by terrain on the charge, they go from like somewhat effective to completely useless because they lose Thunderous and they're -1 to hit, which means they hit on 5s. So their combat effectiveness absolutely plummets if they go through terrain.
Yeah.
Nimble helps with that a bit if you position them smartly.
But still with the charging rules, like you can't go out of your way to avoid terrain when you're charging, so you really have to be perfect lining something up.
I think there is a caveat there, though, is that in this list you have a lot of units generally, and with a lot of units you can protect that charge. So you can block terrain so that they can't charge through it, or you can chuck a character out to make sure that they can use that nimble to get around it. I actually still like the regiments. That, once again, I would use it in the second line of attack, and then from there I would try and get those flanks with the nimble using other units and characters to block impediments.
And what I was trying to get at is I actually prefer the regiments. Yeah, the troops are fine, but where a lot of people would look at these guys and go, oh yeah, the troop is a nice little chaff unit, somewhat threatening flank unit potentially, if for its price at least. I prefer the regiment. 3 unit strength is pretty rad for 150 points with that kind of speed. Again, what you sometimes find is that you're up against flyers because virtually every list has a handful of flyers in them.
Yep.
How often do you see dragons or even goblin sniffs, as it happens, which are basically the same unit with that 1 extra movement? This unit suffers from that a lot. I don't know how many times someone's like plonked a flyer 19.9 inches away from them and they sort of go, oh shit, I'm in a bit of a pickle. But they have this long range threat, and I really like a regiment with the potion of the caterpillar actually, because having a unit that's nimble, yes, it's 170 points and not that hard to kill, but having a unit that's nimble and pathfinder is so rad. Just being able to hoost 18 inches up the flank into a forest or whatever and then still pivot, or double pivot out of sticky situations. They can just keep threatening and threatening and threatening, and if your opponent ignores them, 36 attacks that are never impeded by terrain
Nasty.
in a flank that is vicious and thunderous 1 is something that you just can't ignore.
And that's why I like the 2 regiments. So even if you're not going to get a flank because they're planning for it, at least you can get 32 in the front. I found playing as goblins that 2 regiments just like that is enough to deter a good portion of army while everything else does the work. And because they're so quick, they can dart about or retreat or just redeploy essentially by pivoting 90 and zipping off 18 to 20.
Yeah.
Except to get 2 in the front that are both not impeded is a very difficult thing to do if your opponent is playing well. And if it's a horde or something, those 36 attack on 4s is not enough to break the horde. You're only hitting, roughly 18, wounding like 10, 12, 13, whatever. You're not breaking a horde. So that seems nice in theory, but I find that your opponent's just going to make them impeded. They're not going to give you, two regiments able to charge the same target without either being impeded very often.
They're kind of like flyers. I find 1 is easy to deal with, 2 just throws all sorts of spanners.
Yeah, to a degree I agree with that, but I probably prefer in my list, and again, this could partially be because I have 1 regiment of them and don't particularly want to go ahead and get hold of another one. But having another fast unit, I definitely agree with that in concept, but having another fast unit that can sort of match them for speed and be that double threat, but be a different unit and have other purposes is even better.
Yep, for me it's just late game. So particularly with a objective-based game, these guys are just, with the nimble, that is the key special rule there. That nimble, get them into late game to get an objective is just gold.
And running a regiment for quite a while, off and on, I found that it depended on the matchup a bit. And if your opponent was smart, they just don't give them charges where they're not impeded. And as soon as I started taking them and just biting the bullet and taking the potion, I've found that no matter how good your opponent is, they just keep offering this really legitimate threat that just has to be dealt with. And because of being able to move through terrain freely and happily without worrying about pivoting, without worrying about anything, it also means that they're going to be in cover a lot, which really helps when they're only defense 3 and not that high nerve. So shooting them off is not nearly as easy. And if I really do encourage everyone to try a regiment with a caterpillar potion from time to time, and just you might find that you get more out of them than you think.
Alright, so next up we've got the large infantry. So these are the nightmares. I'm not sure, Benson, if you've got any fluff around them.
Possibly.
Possibly.
Sick.
Alright.
They got a model coming out for them, if it's not out already, actually.
Well, at the moment, they're just using the, is it Dead Zone or Warpath VM
Yeah.
Nightmares?
Yep. So they look kind of like big chunky buggers with weird hand cannon kind of things, like laser gunny kind of things attached under their arms, and that look a bit like drill bits. Yeah, they're quite a weird looking unit.
That's right. Blight cannons, we're calling them.
Interestingly, there's no brutes in this as there were in version 2, yet the background points to it. So just reading here, Barzak understood that slaves need to come in many shapes and sizes. After he had perfected the basic template for a Ratkin, he focused on developing a larger type that could survive in harsher conditions and, most importantly, be the workhorses of the mines. The result was the Ratkin Brute, which don't exist in the list.
Yeah, it's a bit weird that they took them out. I don't get that. I think they just went, we've got a Warpath unit that's got these weird guns kind of on them, so we want to have the nightmares still, but we don't. I guess they just don't plan to do what is basically a rat ogre, because I know that I don't like to use the Skaven equivalent names where practical, but I mean, brute. What the hell is a brute, right? Like, so,
Well, I guess you got a brute and foresight as a character, but
yeah, which are now like a large infantry kind of guy, which is kind of weird, or heavy infantry, I should say.
Either way, these nightmares, large infantry, speed 6, melee 4, range 4, defense 4. They come in a regiment and a horde, unit strength 2 and 3, attacks 9 and 18, and the nerves are 11, 13, and 14, 16. The points 140 and 235. Their special rules are brutish, with crushing strength 1, and the horde option naturally gets the rallying 1, and they are vicious in melee. Those little drill bits are blight cannons with a 12-inch range with steady aim.
so they're kind of like boomers from the ogres.
Yeah, they're not brutal. They're crush 1 though, and they do have vicious and melee, as you said, which is weird for a primarily shooting unit, because they do have the blight cannons.
But the blight cannons don't pierce.
No, they don't pierce, but they got a lot of attacks. I mean, in the horde, 18 attacks is not bad, but no pierce. And they're defense 5. I'll just correct you there, Sellick. They're not defense 4, which is pretty critical.
Oh, did I say defense 4? Defense 5, yep.
Yeah, they're one of your few defense 5 units, put it that way.
Just a lore update. There's no reference to nightmares. It's all about the brutes.
Yeah, it's a little weird. I noticed that as well, reading the lore.
Mm.
Don't quite get it. I've tried this unit a bit recently. I took it to a tournament as well, in one of our local tournaments that good old Mike Crossman ran. And in that particular event, I was experimenting with a bunch of units that I don't often use.
Mm-hmm.
And I found them to be pretty bad. I think that they're not a useless unit by any means. They do decent shooting. They're not bad in combat, although being slightly worse than a brute for significantly more points is not the best. Vicious and melee is quite helpful when you got Crush 1. They do have the rallying, which non-infantry things don't have very often, which is kind of nice. And defense 5 is kind of nice, but then for the lower nerve, they cost 15 points more than a horde of shock troops. This is probably their biggest problem. And they have 6 less nerve, which is obviously way less. Yes, they have an extra defense, not enough to make up for it. They can't take the charge very well, but they do offer that strange 12-inch, which is kind of an 18-inch threat range, because you can move 6 and then fire with steady aim. But what I find in practice using them is that you get to shoot once. Like, you move up, you get one shot off. At that point, you're in charge range of whatever you're shooting, so you better hope it's not too nasty, because it could take you off relatively easily. Your nerves are not that great. If you rally them twice and have inspiring on them as well, then they should be able to take the charge against most things. But they're trying to do too many things, as often is the case with Kings of War units that are those kind of all-rounders that have decent stats, some shooting, some combat, bit of this, bit of that. If you sort of spread out a bit too much like that, you end up costing a lot of points, and that's fine. But I don't know, just take shock troops. Just take shock troops. They're less, and you get more.
Yeah. So, do you think that the only way to run nightmares would be in that second line of an attack, so they can sit over the top? Yeah, they're hitting on 4s because they'll be their range will have cover. Hitting on 5, sorry. So do you think it's that second line and then after that?
No, I really don't. They have a 12-inch range. By the time you're in a second line and you've got a horde in front of you, I mean, this is Ratkin, you don't have a troop in front of you. You've got a horde or a regiment at least of distance in front of you. You've only got an extra couple of inches.
No, you can put a regiment of Vermintide.
Yeah, you could put a regiment of Vermintide in front of them. Nothing wrong with that, apart from the fact that you're giving everything cover. Yeah, unless it's a high enough height, I guess, in which case you're not giving it cover. But yeah, I don't mind that. But for the most part, second line, you don't get to shoot. Your range is so short. Unless a unit's charging the front line, then bouncing back, not that it bounces back anymore, but you know what I mean. You're disengaging and then you're shooting, but then you're not countercharging. So, no, you can't use a 12-inch range unit as a second line unit unless you've got a very small footprint and can reliably get them into
not effectively.
the range of things, which you can do with the little weapon team. They're very nimble and small and they can get in the right place. But I can tell you from experience, it's very difficult to get those nightmares positioned in such a way they can actually shoot something effectively unless they're standing on the front line.
Yep. No, that's fair call.
That seems like an expensive unit as fly deterrent as well. So you just take 2 weapon teams.
Yeah, if weapon teams didn't exist, they might have more of a niche. And the way I took it, and I think this is probably the way to take it still, it's you either take 2 hordes, which I didn't do, and again that's even more eggs in your basket for something that can just get double charged by cavalry and taken off pretty easily, but 1 horde with 2 weapon teams that are nearby at all times. That way you're threatening 20 piercing and 18 not piercing breath weapon-y kind of attacks. Yeah, if something flies near that, it's obviously in a bit of trouble. But as great as it sounds, in practice, with decent terrain on the table and a smart opponent, it's hard to bring all that to bear against one thing. And what I just consistently found time and time again is I would much rather have 2 regiments of much cheaper infantry or a horde of shock troops or something, and then those 2 weapon teams still floating around, and they do enough on their own to deter things still, but in a much more effective, nimble manner than these guys do.
Yeah, that's right. So for 235 points, it's a horde of shock troops with the plague pots.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
and these guys just end up in combat a lot. That's the reality. You get 1 shot off, you get a few wounds on something, and you go, cool, all right, I paid a lot of points for that shooting effectively. And then they end up in combat a lot, and they're not rubbish in combat. They're just not as good as virtually any other unit of equivalent points.
I think it's... Yeah. They probably can't go 2 rounds.
I found that I repeatedly was in the position where, like, do I charge something or do I shoot? And usually the answer was charge. Sometimes it would be walk up and shoot in their face. But if you charge...
Well, they're better in combat
You've
than
got
in
vicious.
range.
They're slightly better in combat, and maybe the positioning on the table is such that the charge option is the better one. You know, they get out of the way of other things. Whereas if they're standing there with their big footprint shooting something, they're often in the way of other stuff in your army.
Yeah, the vicious in melee does help significantly in melee. Like, that makes them better. But I do agree. Like, 2 rounds of combat, these guys will be dead. Even with their rallying 1, you'll be, 15, 17? They'll be off at defense 5.
Yeah, they're an awkward unit.
What if their light cannons were 14-inch range?
I think 16. I think that would be better.
Yeah, 14 or 16 would definitely help. I think that it'd have a subtle but large impact on the table. The other thing is they have crushing 1 in combat, crushing nothing at range, and vicious in combat. So you find, like, if you're facing off against another unit of equivalent points that's actually tough, shooting it is crap at that point. Because even without any cover, you're like 9 hits and then rolling against their defense with no piercing. Whereas when you charge it, you've got Crush 1 and Vicious. And then at that point, and I found this over and over again, is I'm in combat and I'm going, why don't I just have, if these were Brutes, they'd just be doing more. Because Brutes used to be Crush 2 and also Regen. And I never particularly thought Brutes was a great unit either. But like if these were Brutes, they'd cost 30, 40 points less and be more effective.
How much better would they be if they could just take the option of plague pots?
Oh, plague pots would be great on them. I'd staple that to them.
Then you might actually stand and shoot and then countercharge.
I mean, then you're a 250-point unit with a lot of the same problems. But moving up shooting and against infantry hordes, all of a sudden they're looking way better. Yeah, because that's what they're meant to kill. They're meant to like tune up low defense units because they're pretty crap against like golems and stuff. I've had them facing off against like stone golems and you're just wishing you had a shock troop horde for less.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on. What's next?
Next is Vermintide. They're a swarm unit, quite similar to a lot of other swarms that are out there in the game. Speed 6, melee 5, defense 3. They come in a regiment, horde, or legion, which have 9, 18, and 36 attacks. 9, 11 nerve, 12, 14, or 19, 21. Points are 65, 110, or 195, respectively. They are nimble, which is great. Vicious in melee, which doesn't really matter because their attacks suck anyway. And Wild Charge D3, which is a cool little addition in this edition. So this is a cheap chaff unit. You take them in a regiment.
Legion seems weird.
Legion's very weird. I'd love to try one sometime. 1921 nerve sounds fine until you realise they've got this enormous footprint and they're defense 3. So they're quite easy to take off still at nearly 200 points. Much easier than, say, a shock troop with an extra few nerve and an extra defense.
I mean, even a horde of warriors is the same as a legion. It's like fewer attacks, but better defense.
Yeah, 36 attacks is pretty sexy, though, on a unit that's nimble and wild charge and vicious. They're like almost a cavalry unit at that point. I'd love to try one out. They're weird. They're also not... They're also irregular, of course, like all swarms. Or all swarms that I know of anyway. So taking those larger units of hordes or legions, not only is your footprint is obscene, 12 40 mil bases, are they? Yeah.
Yep.
So 12 40 mil bases.
Yeah, 6 across.
It's huge.
Yeah, it's huge. It's like this. It's bigger than a horde of infantry, yeah, in the footprint.
The thing that gets me about the swarms is that the unit strength is still only 1 for the points you're paying.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And I think in this sort of list, you need the unit strength for objectives.
Very true. And so your legion so this is a faster flanking unit. If you want your like damage unit, taking your legion, I love the idea of it. I think it's a cool little like just horde of chittering rats, just like a carpet of rats going at you, with charge between 13 and 15 inches and 36 attacks. Heaven forbid you get flanked. You're then looking at 72 attacks, even on 5s to hit. Like that's going to do some damage, and it's so vicious because they're such vicious little assholes. But Sellick's completely right. No unlock and unit strength 1 at nearly 200 points.
So take 3 legions.
Take it in a troll list, maybe. And then they just charge in and chitter through things, and then they're just there to sort of do a bit of damage before they die, because they're not going to be sitting on objectives and holding objectives at the end of the game much. Yeah, just you end up, as fun as the idea, I like what they did with the unit to give you those options, but ultimately you're going to take them in a regiment or not at all. 65 points is very cheap for a chaff unit.
Yes.
They have 9 5 to hit vicious attacks. Who really cares? But they're have
just
that
there to get in the
smaller
way.
footprint then at the point when they're troop, and they're nimble, which is really useful. But speed 6 is crap for a chaff unit. It's impossible to, like, the reason you pay a little bit extra for units like gargoyles or snow foxes or what have you is because they have movement like 9 or 10, they fly, those kinds of things.
Having played some chaff that's only speed 6, nimble helps a lot here because you can still run up 12 and then pivot. And I find that's enough to get in the way, if that's their role, is just to get in the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. The pivot after the 12, it's exactly why it's great. That's right. Or occasionally, maybe if you're in an awkward spot, you might pivot, move 6, pivot again. But make sure that your frontage, once you've pivoted, is a troublesome prospect for your opponent to charge. But often I find myself where I'm like, if I want a really cheap chaff unit, warriors are just as fast. Yes, they don't have nimble, but for 20 points, I'm getting heaps of extra defense. They're 3 extra nerve and defense 4 instead of 3, and they have unit strength 2 instead of 1, which means they can actually hold objectives against single entities and things. They're just a much more reliable unit for 20 points, so it's often hard to make that exchange.
What if you give a legion Brew of Haste? Because then what you do is you run up your 12, and then because charging now is from closest point to closest point, you can pivot your 90 and get an extra, 4 or 5 inches or whatever it is for your next turn to charge just about anything.
Yeah, obscenely long charge range.
So that's a legion, did you say?
Yeah.
Good luck ever not being impeded, though, right? Like, good luck ever not going through terrain. And then your 36 attacks are hitting on 6s, so forget about it.
It's also the same price as a shock troop horde.
It's just so bad. There's no way to look at that unit and be like, yeah, that's great.
Yeah, but
except for the memes.
You're moving
I want to
7.
take one. All right, next tournament, I'll take one for the memes.
The Verbentide.
Moving 7 legion. That'd be all right.
I think if they were, say, 5 points more in all their permutations and they had Pathfinder, they'd be a noticeably better chaff unit and a noticeably better legion unit. And as a horde of rats, they should have Pathfinder. Like, they're rats. What are they going
Or
to do?
just
Like,
straight
trip over
up.
the swamp or something and not be able to go through it? No, they're freaking rats, man. They're a
I
horde.
feel like it can still slow them down, but I don't think they're going to trip and stumble over each other and go, oh no, I can't hit.
No,
as
they're not
well."
going to like fall out of formation and be like, oh dear, we'd better redress our ranks in this forest or something. They're freaking horde of rats, bro. Come on. So that would have made them really interesting to me, but without that, it's like, oh yeah, I'll take a troop every now and again, or I won't. Whatever.
Ratkin are OP enough as it is, so I don't need that. All right, so chariots. We have one option for chariots, and they are the tunnel runners. So these are a speed 8 chariot, melee 4, defense 5. They come in your troops and regiments only, and they have unit strength 1 and 2. But they've got a good amount of attack. So the troop has 16 with 12-14 nerve at 170 points, and the regiment is 24 attacks, 14-16 nerve at 210. They get just crushing and thunderous. That's it.
Yeah, crushing and thunderous.
So either Pathfinder or +1 to hit to make sure that those 24 attacks are chomping.
Yeah, I like these guys with Jesse's boots.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I like them with the boots or the caterpillar potion, or what I am very frequently taking them with now is a regiment with the brew of sharpness, because the brew of sharpness is only 35, not 45, because they're not a horde. They used to be large cavalry, which have the same footprint and extra unit strength and stuff. But suffice to say that they're a very similar unit.
And high attacks, it works well.
It makes sense because the miniatures themselves, there are tunnel runner miniatures, and again, they're from that vermin range. They look like, a little chariot, kind of like a little mini doom wheel kind of thing. So having 3 on a base makes sense as a regiment of chariots. And crush 1, thunderous 1 is fine, but it's 24 attacks. Once you give them the +1 to hit, 3s to hit, 24 attacks, especially if they get their thunderous, like they still do okay when they charge into impeded terrain.
Mm-hmm.
But 16-inch range, 24 attacks, if you just call it crush 2 for simplicity, and 3s to hit, that's as good as any cavalry unit in the game, really. That is very, very good and deceptively good. People are surprised by these guys often. I find if they charge something in the open, in the front, it usually dies. Like, unless it's a horde of infantry with really high nerve, it could well be dead.
Yeah, I like these guys.
Yeah, it gives you a reach out and touch option. I think it's I don't want to say an essential unit to the Ratkin, but it's approaching that, just because, as I was talking about before, if you're taking your horde of, move up the board and then try to counterpunch kind of army, which for the most part Ratkin is, you still really need something that can threaten at range. Reach out and touch.
Yep.
Either with a lot of shooting is one way of doing it, which I don't prefer, or with a flyer and a couple of cavalry or something. I think having a regiment of these and a regiment of hackpaws, so that you've got a couple of things that can, actually project a decent threat range and be nasty on the charge, is critical if you want to control the board. So having both of them is probably the only way I would ever conceive of not having a demon, is if I've got at least 2 of those things, because otherwise you just don't have enough to dictate the opponent's movement and actually make them make hard choices.
Yeah.
What do you think about giving, if you take 2 of these, the second one, the Wine of Elvenkind, to give them nimble?
Yeah, I like that as well.
Cute. It's fine. I don't know. Wine of Elvenkind, it's one of those things where it's same as every army. It's really nice to have nimble. It costs quite a lot of points, and often 1 extra movement or potion of the caterpillar or something like that is going to be as good or better in a lot of scenarios for less points. But I don't know, nimble's very good.
It just allows you to
So,
pull off those
dunno.
dodgy maneuvers to charge things that your opponent thinks are safe.
That's true, but they cost a lot of points then. You're looking at 250 points for, a very hitty unit, but if they are impeded because your opponent's positioned correctly, I always kind of prefer to think of, when you're talking about these heavy impact, lots of points, hammer kind of units, I think, how well do they fight when they go through a forest or something, or over a fence or what have you? Because my opponents, if they're not good, then I'm going to run them over anyway. And it doesn't really matter how good the unit is. If they are good, they're going to position in such a way that I very frequently am impeded. And at that point, Wine of Elvenkind is, you've got a 250 point unit that hits on 5s and only has crush 1, and that's not good. That's my view anyway.
Mm.
Take that with a grain of salt, depending on your meta, depending on how much terrain you use, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, Going back one step, Vermintide are also expendable.
Yes.
Good point. Yes, so you can hit him with your...
So instead of taking like the wretches, you just take one regiment of Vermintide and that'll be your battery. Who cares if they become devastated?
If your opponent's got any shooting units that can actually see them, which is actually potentially hard because they're only height 1. So you put them behind your regiments and stuff. They need to have something on a hill or something quite tall to shoot them.
And then they're shooting a Vermintide.
Yeah. And then they're shooting a Vermintide, sure. So, yeah, you heal battery. A regiment of them is potentially a better option than your horde of wretches. Good point. 50 points cheaper, too.
All right, we'll be back right after a quick break.
Some 13 years since Balzac had sealed himself away, the heavy doors opened once more and Balzac reappeared triumphant. As he emerged from his self-imposed exile, behind him streamed a vast pack of rats, but not rats as they had been. These were something new, something terrible, a horrifying hybrid of rats and other races, dwarf, human, elf, and goblin. In their eyes there was a smoldering malignancy, and their rapid jerky movements were spine-chilling and beyond natural. Balzac had bred a new race of slaves, a race he named Noah. Ones that could do more, work harder, work longer, and with the trait of the race he most desired, breed more slaves in vast quantities.
And we're back. Alright, so we're going to be starting off with the War Engine. So it's 1 of 2, and the first one is the Weapon Team. So movement 6, no melee, range 4, defense 5, unit strength 0, with 10 attacks and 8-10 nerve at 85 points. It does have nimble, and it's got the Blight Spew, another 12-inch range, piercing 1, steady aim weapon. But for 80 points, what do we think?
85 points. Well, seeing you use them, just 1 is great.
Yeah, I really like 2 relatively nearby one another or on either side of a regiment or what have you, so they can concentrate fire on things. Because once you've got 20 piercing shots hitting on 4s into something, you can actually get some really heavy, reliable damage on it. But yeah, in low points, even 1 is fine, just to sort of spray and pray, get a few extra damage on things and make your charges that little bit more effective and that kind of stuff. It also gives you some protection against flyers because they are, as Sellick said, nimble and steady aim, so they can rotate and shoot something in the face that lands behind you and that kind of thing, which is very useful. Certainly you don't want to be turning around and facing the rear of your nightmares towards your opponent's army when they land behind you with a dragon, but you don't really care too much with the war machine. At risk of banging on about previous edition too much, which I'm trying to avoid, but they do just come with piercing now. People may not realise that. They used to have that as an option, which I would usually not take to try to keep them really cheap. They now just come with it all the time and obviously cost more accordingly with that. The weird thing about them, which catches a lot of people off guard, is they're defense 5. I see no reason that they're defense 5. Like, they're like 2 rats holding a big old Gatling gun or a flamethrower or whatever. There's no apparent reason I can see why they wouldn't be defense 4 or even 3. But
and you'll take it?
oddly enough, they're defense 5, which can, similar to the claw shots, who have a better reason for being defense 5 because they've got a big old shield. All it means with nerve 8-10 is that every now and again, a spray in their general direction will not kill them where it otherwise would. And getting charged, they frequently get charged by individual characters or characters on flying mounts and things like that. And if they're a cheaper one that only has one of those versions that has sort of
3 attacks.
Yeah, 4 or 5 attacks or something. They miss with a couple of attacks, and then you've got that defense 5. Quite frequently, they survive that charge. I mean,
you got to remember, it is a war engine, so even if a character's attacking it, they get triple attacks.
Yeah, absolutely. So being a war engine now means that, you'd think they would always die from it, but that defense 5 just means... when I say quite frequently, that's probably selling it a bit too much.
Surprisingly
occasionally
often.
charge. Yeah, surprisingly often they just, your opponent just whiffs the wound roll, and then you've rallied them once or twice, so they've actually got a somewhat solid nerve, and maybe you've got your inspiring nearby, which will make them hold, just a little bit more often than they should. But 12-inch piercing shots, sign me up.
Yeah, they're great.
Great unit.
I sort of see these as a 2 or none. I'd love the 20 attacks. if there's 2 units, combine them. But when I see it just as one at the height 2, that's when and once again, that sort of limited range of 12 inches, I see it dropping away in value for me.
I think one at low points is fine.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
When you've got a lot of units that have very low nerve, or units that are like a lot of regiments on the board that take a bit of damage from a charge and you can finish them off and things like that. I think one's fine at low points. But other than that, I agree with you. I think it's kind of a 2 or none thing. It's a certain amount of like critical mass of fire that you can send in something's direction. And the other thing that's really good about them, unlike other war machines, is because you've got movement 6 and nimble. For 85 points, which, by the way, is only 20 more than a regiment of Vermintide, what I find sometimes is I go up and I shoot with them a couple of times, and then I just whack one. Like, if it's critical to do so, if it's going to protect a horde of shock troops or a valuable unit, I'll just whack one right in front of a unit. They move 6, or they can move. They can move up and rotate. I believe as a war engine, they still can't move at the double. Is that correct?
No.
That's correct.
Yeah, good, because I haven't been doing that. That would be cheating. Otherwise, that'd be sweet being able to move up 12 and rotate. But because they hover around that core a lot of the time, that's the way to play them, I believe, anyway, is hover them around your more critical units. And your opponent shouldn't really be able to charge them outside of little individual characters and stuff all that often, unless you position them really badly. Unless, of course, you want them to. And they double as a nice little chaff unit too.
Okay, and the next one here?
A shredder is a bog standard kind of catapult kind of thing. Speed 5 rather than 6 for some reason. Range 5+, defense 5+, again. 3 attacks, nerve 8, 10, and 90 points. So it's a 48-inch blast D3, ignore cover, piercing 1, reload, and shattering.
Shattering's nice.
Shattering is nice. Yeah, not much to say about this versus... I mean, I guess this is the first review we've done again for 3rd edition, and a lot of different armies, nearly all of them, in fact, have a war machine or a war engine that's somewhat equivalent to this, be it a bolt thrower or a catapult or something. They all have very small variations between them. But your blast D3 piercing 2 is probably what I'd call the average standard. This one's got 1 less piercing. Ignores cover's common for this kind of unit. So they've got a very long range. It kind of needs ignore cover because it sits behind everything else and has only a range of 5+. So if something does have cover and it actually was effective, it would obviously halve its chances of hit and make it quite useless. Still garbage against Night Stalkers because when everything is stealthy and you're actually -1 to hit, it's pretty rubbish. But yeah, 5s to hit, you'll hit. You got 3 attacks, so on average you hit 1 a time, but every now and again you'll spike and hit 3 times. Every now and again you hit none. But it is actually a reasonably reliable unit. What you end up comparing it against is the claw shots, which are only 5 points more, have 5 piercing 2 attacks instead of the 3 blast D3 piercing 1 attacks.
It's just slightly longer range.
And what it ends up being is the claw shots are more reliably, they'll get 1 or 2 damage. Oh, yeah, you're right. It's an extra 12-inch range, but 36 is usually enough. So 48 doesn't matter that much. The claw shots more reliably get 1 or 2 damage on, and don't just whiff completely like the shredder does as frequently. But then the shredder has a higher ceiling. So every now and again you'll hit and do like 8 or 9 wounds, which obviously you can't do with 5 shots that the claw shots have.
And more importantly is the unit strength on the claw shots.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily more importantly. That's the comparison as a shooting unit. They have the same nerve, the same defense, so defensively they're the same. But yeah, the claw shots, for me, they're like just a tiny nose in front of the shredder purely because, as you say, Benson, 1 unit strength, you can chuck them on a baseline objective.
Corner on the back line and
whatever else. And they just have that unit strength presence. If I was going to take 2, though, I'd probably just take 1 of each. I just think it's a bit boring to take double claw shots or double shredder. And honestly, they have such a similar role that if I was going to take 2 of those units, I'd just take 1 of each.
Yeah, 2 is effective, though. Like, you can't, from a more
3 would be as well.
Yes.
Yep.
Let's
absolutely.
take 3.
So we're talking 3 claw shots, 3 shredders, 3 weapon teams?
Well, one other thing that we didn't compare in that particular comparison is that the claw shots are not an unlock. They don't require an unlock.
Yeah.
Outside of the fact that they're a troop. Troops, you know what I mean. The War Machine unlock is of higher value than the troop unlock. Generally in Ratkin, you take quite a hordy army, unless you're taking heaps of hordes of wretches for whatever reason, which don't unlock. You shouldn't be hurting for unlocks too much, but nevertheless it is, a consideration.
Yeah, the thing that annoys me about the shredder is that it's only piercing 1.
Doesn't quite shred, does it? It's more like a cutter.
No, it's a cutter, not a shredder. Like if you even have a look, I think it's the sharp stick thrower. That's piercing 2, and then they've got their rock, like big rock thrower, bolt thrower, whatever it is. That's piercing 3. So this one here being piercing 1, it just doesn't cut the mustard for me.
The shattering is really nice, but you're right. With piercing 1 and 3 shots, 5s to hit, blast D3, there's a reasonable chance that you'll either miss completely, of course, or you get 1 hit, 2 dice to damage, and then you just don't damage the thing. So even though it's got shattering, there's a pretty high likelihood that you'll end up doing stone 0, which is why claw shots, the other reason that claw shots for me just are a nose in front of the shredder, particularly if you're taking multiples, because if you want to take heaps, as Benson was suggesting, then you need a lot of unlocks to get a bunch of shredders, whereas you don't really with claw shots.
Yeah, so I think from mine, the only way that shattering works with inside the shredder is if you've got a shitload of, or a lot of claw shots to actually do some damage, then you get the shatter, and then the test at the end of the phase. I think that's the only way I could see it work.
Yeah, your other decent long-range tool, or semi-long-range anyway, is lightning bolt.
You need to complement it.
Some combination, I would totally agree with that, some combination thereof, if you're trying to project a decent long-range threat, which Ratkin aren't the best at that, but, they have the option. A heap of lightning, few claw shots, few shredders, sort of, to taste is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, bringing us to monsters, I suppose.
Let's continue on with shooting. So we'll do the Death Engine Spewer. Basically, Death Engine is 2 variants. This is the shooty version. It is a monster on a chariot base, speed 6, melee 4, range 4, defense 4, unit strength 1 like most monsters, d6 plus 7 attacks, fearless 16 at 200 points. It's got crushing 1, and its ranged weapon is a battle cannon, which is ranged 18 at piercing 2.
It's a rattle cannon, I believe.
Yeah, it's a rattle cannon. Thanks, mate.
This is the first time I've noticed that it's like rat, rather than just rattle cannon.
Well, there you go.
18 inches, d6 plus 7 shots at piercing 2. Pretty decent. Range 4 plus.
It's not bad, and it can fight in combat. Because it's still crushing 1, it's still hitting on 4s, but it doesn't have steady aim, so if you move, you're hitting on 5s.
Yeah, I find you're hitting on 5s a very large percentage of the time. Quite often you need to shoot over a unit, or shooting something in cover, of course, or you have to move in order to get into range. It's a pretty ideal circumstance to be hitting on 4s, even if you start the turn in range and in open sight of something within 18, therefore be hitting on 4s. Quite frequently you find you want to move it anyway because you want to keep it in a threatening position, either defensively or to offer, to threaten flanks or whatever. So you're on 5s a lot with this unit, and even occasionally on 6s. So you need to factor that in. I think that's honestly the main reason that it hits on 4+ rather than 5s, which a lot of other sort of equivalent-ish. Well, if there even is a unit in the game that's equivalent to this one, it's quite a weird one. But yeah,
Death Engine Spewer, too expensive for me. 200 points, as you've already mentioned. It's going to be hitting on 5s 90% of the time. It's just doesn't quite cut it for me. So it's going to have, 8 to 13 attacks, hitting on 4s, 5s, 6s. Dash 16 just isn't high enough either to sort of say that it's going to be sticking around for a long time. For 200 points.
Yeah, defense 4 really hurts it.
In this list, it just doesn't have the value for the points.
A 200-point model that is only defense 4 is, definitely you're paying a reasonable cost there.
Yeah. So, in comparison, we've got the Death Engine Impaler, which is also on a chariot base, speed 8, melee 4, no range, defense 5, unit strength 1. It's also got the d6 plus 7 attacks, also got the dash 16 nerve, but for only 180 points, still high 5. It's got CS or crushing strength 2 with vicious in melee. This one here is a little bit better for me.
Yeah, it's funny how it's changed. These used to be quite sort of the other way around, but I agree with you, actually, Sellick.
It's like a slightly faster giant.
Most people they see the spewer and they're just used to it. They see that most people are using doom wheels to represent the unit until Mantic come out with a different unit. I'd love to see them come out with a miniature where the spewer looks significantly different to the Impaler, because otherwise... Obviously, the model looks the same. People are used to it being the spewer or those who are veterans of Kings of War, because back in the day, when it used to be Defense 5 and stuff, it used to be just sort of the auto choice out of the two. There wasn't much of a reason to go for the Impaler. But now with extra Crush 1 and Vicious in melee, that actually makes it far, far better in combat. I can tell you that much for free, because with a random number of attacks and only 4 up to hit, you really need nearly every hit to wound for it to be impactful. Because sometimes you go in, you get like, let's say 10 attacks, which is a decent roll. That's a roll of a 3 plus 7. 10 attacks, you hit 5 times. With Crush 1, you're doing like 1 or 2. Well, it depends what you're attacking. If you're attacking something decent, maybe doing 2 or 3 wounds, whatever. When you got Crush 2 and Vicious, nearly every hit wounds. So because of that, you're much more impactful on the charge. But the biggest reason that the Death Engine Impaler is a noticeably more useful unit than the Spewer is speed 8 instead of speed 6 and defense 5 instead of 4. It means it can be a mobile anvil because nerve 16, if you boost that up with a couple of rallying and you're sitting at nerve 18, if you, let's say you've got a demon behind it or next to it or something, which is not too infrequent, you've got this rallying 2, you've got inspired, your defense 5 and your dash 18, nothing goes through that in the charge 1v1. That is super tough.
Yeah.
While as your Spewer, which is sitting further back quite often, trying to shoot and trade that way, only defense 4. A lot of things will charge into it and all too often take it off in one round. And then you've got a 200-point shooting unit, which has done a few wounds and then just got killed.
And this list needs a can opener. And I think that's what this is.
Exactly. This is a mobile can opener, which this list, outside of the demon, just simply doesn't have. Tunnel Runners sort of do it. Hackpaws do it less. Hackpaws aren't really a can opener at all, but they're at least mobile. But yeah, the Impaler is there for you on a relatively small footprint. It can keep up with Tunnel Runners. It can keep up with Hackpaws to a degree. And then if you want a scary fast flank or a, reach out and threaten nasty kind of unit, Impaler goes really well when paired with one of those other 3 mobile threats to do some work. By itself, it's fine. But really becomes scary when you line it up next to a unit of Tunnel Runners or nearby a bunch of Hackpaws or next to a demon. All of a sudden, combo charge threat is real.
Yeah, and the height 5 really complements it well with this list as well, so it can see over the top, charge around when required. So as long as you've set up all the angles quite nicely, you should be able to do it.
Yeah, if it was nimble, I'd have a real boner for it, but sadly it is not. Which is fair enough.
Nimble would be, I think that might be too good.
Yeah, you can see why it wouldn't be nimble as well. It's sort of like...
It's a big thing.
In the form of a Doom Wheel, at least. It's sort of, you can imagine it ratcheting up a heap of speed as the rats buzz around, all the lightning goes off and shit, but it would be hard to maneuver.
Outside of a Doom Wheel, like the old school G-Dub Doom Wheel, any other models that you can sort of think about that could represent this?
Well, you got the old G-Dub Screaming Bell.
Okay, yeah.
And Plague Furnace.
Yeah. I think you want something that looks fairly fast. If you obviously Ratkin in general, if you're not going with the relatively small amount that Mantic sell or Games Workshop, what are you going with? There's not heaps of other stuff out there.
Not much available.
You could do like some sort of like goblin pump wagony kind of looking thing, and then just like whack some rats on it, or some other sort of contraption-y looking thing with lots of spikes and everything on it that can impale stuff. The weird thing about it in terms of fluffiness is that it looks as though it should, and a lot of people get caught out by this, it looks as though it should be like an impactful cavalry kind of unit in the sense that it has like thunderous charge, but it's not. It's just straight Crush 2. You'd think it'd be like Crush 1, Thunderous 2 or something, which is what it used to be, but now it's just straight Crush 2, so it doesn't rely on the impetus of the charge necessarily, so it can trade quite well in a back and forth situation.
Yeah.
All right, brings us to the Titans then. Let me go ahead and talk about the Mutant Rat Fiend. Awesome changes to this unit. Very cool unit these days. It has speed 7. This is just like before I said, the Shredder. When talking about the Shredder, a lot of armies have their War Machine catapult kind of equivalent. This is the Ratkin version of the giant style thing. So Mutant Rat Fiend is your giant. They've got speed 7, melee 3, which is pretty awesome and bit questionable fluff-wise, but whatever. Melee 3, defense 4, which of course sucks for a giant, but 10 attacks, nerve dash 18. I say it's like a giant in that it's, your big monster, but
it's on a Titan base.
It's on a Titan base and it's walking on the ground at speed 7. But it's quite different to a giant really inactively because it's surprisingly reliable. 220 points. Crush 2, not 3. Radiance Life, Vermin only, which is really weird. I'll get to that in a sec. Rallying 1, which is awesome. That's one of the best things about it, believe it or not, because you can pong it in between your hordes and really reliably get that Rallying 2 on things. Regen 5+, Strider, and Vicious in melee. So interesting unit. It doesn't hit quite as hard as some large things and that it's only crush 2. But forget about that because it hits. It's got Strider, it hits on 3s, and it's got Vicious. So those 10 attacks are really reliable attacks.
It's got like a support role as well.
And it's pseudo support roll. But don't be fooled. Radiance of Life might as well just say 1 wound back to this unit every turn because it's vermin only.
Which
and
is
you'll
Swarm.
find you'd think that'd be heaps of. You'd think heaps of Ratkin would have the vermin keyword, but you'd be wrong. It's really just the Vermintide Swarm that have
Which is
it.
why you're taking a legion of them.
Sure. So that their defense 3 can get 1 wound back every turn. Big freaking whoop.
Yeah.
As long as it's near this thing. Yeah. So a bit of an odd choice, I think, to do it that way. I think it would have been really interesting if it just straight up had Radiance of Life, or maybe Radiance of Life Expendable, or some other keyword. Mob, maybe, as a keyword that a lot of the infantry have. Beast, even. I don't know, whatever. Any keyword other than vermin, in the sense that who gives a crap about giving 1 wound back to your Jupiter?
I think the
rats?
point is because little rats come out of it and little rats.
Yeah, I kind of understand it fluff-wise, but that wasn't the way to execute it for me because it effectively does absolutely nothing. All it really is it's just an extra regen, but it does make it really defensively reliable because Dash 18, Defense 4, so its big weakness is that Defense 4 for 220 points. But you go into it, don't take it off first time, then you got regen 5+ on all the wounds that it's taken, and the auto wound back as well. Yeah, so Radiance of Life, I believe, happens after moving the unit, and regen happens when you move the unit.
Yes.
So my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong here, I've only used this guy in a couple of tournaments, but I could have been doing it wrong. I think you do regen before Radiance of Life.
Yeah, so when you give them an order is when you should be rolling for the regen.
Yeah, cool. So I've been doing it right. Because that's obviously the better of the 2 ways to do it. Because you get an extra die to roll for regen, and then you get that wound back. So sometimes I've had it take 5 wounds from shooting or something, and then it just regens 3 back, and then gets an auto 1 back, and you go, yeah, sucked in. That's awesome. You know? So he's a tough dude. He slops along with all your infantry at a similar pace, but even threatens a little bit further.
Just a bit.
So standing right in between 2 hordes of shock troops is where this guy loves to be. He goes, I've got an extra bit of inch of threat because I got speed 7. I can charge through terrain, no dramas because of Strider, and I offer that lovely little rallying bonus and just be tough as 2 short blanks. He's a great unit, I reckon. Really like him.
Yeah, I like him as well. Would you take 2? 2 seems a bit like too much.
I don't think so with the other options in the army. You just, why take 2 mutant rat fiends when you could have 1 of them and then 1 impaler or 1 in a demon or something like that? If you want a couple of big monsters. Although, to be honest, I feel like that with virtually every army. Why take 3 of the same monster when you can have 3 slightly different monsters and have a more interesting army? But that's me.
All right, you're going to love my list later on. Okay, so let's get into the heroes here. So first up, we have the Brood Mother, which I think is quite interesting once we get through it. So the Mum is a large infantry hero, spellcaster 1, so can be hexed, height 3, speed 6, melee 4, no range, defense 5, unit strength 1 with 5 attacks, 12-14 nerve at 120 points. She is crushing 1, inspiring, nimble, has radiance of life with no stipulations there, so radiance of life on everyone. And she has this weird rule, eat the weak. So she's got Drain Life 5 as her spell, the only spell that she can take. But when she targets friendly core units with expendables, so your wretches or your, I think, warriors as well.
Yeah, wretch warriors or the Vermintide.
The Drain Life is doubled, so it goes to Drain Life 10. And then you carry out spells damage as normal. And if you use it on your expendable units, they don't take a nerve test. So this is what we were talking about when we were saying the Drain Life battery, because you're just draining life your own expendable troops, and who cares how much damage they have, as long as they're not attacked from something else, then they could have a million damage at the end.
So Drain Life 5 goes to 10, and as Benson was saying, if you had 2 Brood Mothers, then it's a little bit like Healed 20. It's still a lot worse than Healed 20 because you roll 20 dice, but then you've got to roll a wound. If you're winning on 2s, obviously you get most of those, but you are damaging your own unit, and if that unit disappears, then that option's off the table.
Then you just go back to good old Drain Life 5.
Good old Drain Life 5. Yeah.
You can give her a normal ranged attack in the form of a Blight Staff, which is 18 inches. She gives her range 4 with Piercing 1 and Steady Aim, as well as Vicious on those ranged attacks, and that's an extra 20 points. Or, if you don't like Drain Life, you can just swap it for free. But that seems a bit weird. You're just negating that Eat the Weak.
Yeah.
rule altogether.
I think if you're trying for that sort of other version of the army list, which is kind of like a close range firepower kind of list, which I actually have tried a little bit in this recent experimental tournament where you've got, a horde or two of nightmares, a bunch of weapon teams, and maybe a few of these guys and some other options in the list where you've got a lot of 12 to 18 inch range, even, dare I say it, scurriers, a whole bunch of, like quite deadly firepower that's quite short ranged. Maybe you're going for that kind of option, but yeah, I don't really get it either. If you're not taking her to drain the life and being a brood mama, then why bother?
Because 120 points just for 5 range 4 attacks, why don't you just take a Warlock which has Lightning 5 for 90 points?
Yeah, probably the biggest reason for that is inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they've got 5 crushing 1 attacks, which is like okay as well, and nimble. So if you can get her into flanks, which you might occasionally be able to do.
Late game.
10 attacks on 4s at crush 1 is okay. It's nothing to write home about, but she can contribute to combat a little bit. Probably most of the time you want to stand just out of combat and drain life things, obviously, and be an inspiring thing. Yeah. But it's tempting to do a list much like Benson was describing before, where you're smashing your Vermintide or your Wretches or whatever and healing things and being like a really tough center. But the problem with that is it's very vulnerable to shooting.
Yeah.
That can already struggle a little bit against really heavy shooting lists. And Brood Mothers, they're unlike a lot of other large infantry characters, which is nice to be not an individual for the most part. You've got a unit strength you can claim, which is not nothing. As we've all seen bloody ogre characters jumping on objectives in the last point of the game. It's very irritating. You get your doubles for flanking, all that kind of thing. But you can also be seen over all your rat infantry hordes. You can be shot off. They do have defense 5, which isn't bad, but they are more vulnerable than a warlock with an inspiring talisman might be, standing behind your unit. And not as easy to draw a line of sight to, much more nimble as far as getting away from things that come around the side of your army and threaten you and those kinds of stuff. So,
What do we think about the option for the blight stuff?
I like the drain life.
Yeah, I wouldn't bother with the blight stuff.
And I wouldn't add it on top of, because it's either one or the other.
I probably would add it on top of.
And I might get one ranged attack like that, because otherwise they'll be in combat and I'll be trying to heal them up.
Yeah, you can't cast it into combat, unlike the Drain Life. It's not bad at putting a wound or two on a chaff unit.
So I sort of see it a little bit differently in that if I'm trying to get an inspiring source, so we'll say a Swarm Crier and a Warlock, this is actually cheaper to do so. So it's 140 points at that point, or free if you replace the Drain Life, and you get effectively 5 shots at the range 4 with piercing 1s with a Vicious for that point cost. And I get inspiring as well. Yeah, I've got to suffer the increased height and potentially get shot.
You're much more vulnerable.
Or you could just give the inspiring talisman on a wall.
And having 2 different units is better than one for a number of reasons. And inspiring talisman exists. Yeah.
No, I could be wrong.
Get back to your hole.
Well, I guess you might as well talk about the Warlock then, Sellick, since that's...
All right, then. The Warlock, probably the better choice, apparently. Speed 6, melee 5, no range, defense 4+. It's got no unit strength, but it is a spellcaster too, so it can be hexed.
Oh.
Thank you. It's got 1 attack. It's a 9/11 at 90 points with its height 2. It does have Lightning Bolt 5 as out of the box.
That's so good.
And a myriad of different options. So it can be mounted on a flea bag to get to speed 9 for 25 points. It's got Bane Chant 3 for 30 points, Heal 4 for 30 points, Hex 2 for 10 points, and Veil of Shadows 2 for 25 points. 30 points, sorry.
That's special. You can only have one Warlock with Veil of Shadows.
You can only have one. Is that what that extra one was? There we go.
And Bane Chant 3.
Great.
If you want to pay 25 points for a spell that's almost as useful as Hex, sure.
Bane Chant?
No, Veil of Shadows.
Oh, right. I was going to say. Veil of Shadows is a stealthy, isn't it?
Just cross out Hex and Veil of Shadows. Believe me, I've experimented with them with a bit. They're complete potatoes. You could build a really funny meme list with it, which is centered around Veil of Shadows if you wanted to. Just play Night Stalkers, it's better.
Hold up. So you're saying that Hex and Veil of Shadows, rubbish?
Completely, worse than taking a bloody... Just give him, the Sword of Striking or something, for God's sake. Just take anything else.
Unless you know you're playing against your mate and he's taking a gun line.
Yeah.
And you've only got rats.
No, you'll just shoot the stuff that the Veil of Shadows isn't targeting, or you'll just fail to cast it on 2 dice or whatever. Or he'll just ignore the stealthy and kill the things. It's so much can go wrong. Just forget about it. Cast your lightning, it's better. Costs nothing. Costs no extra points. Forget about
Does
it.
damage.
Bane Chant 3, on the other hand, is of course awesome. Bane Chant 3 is fantastic. It's significantly more reliable than Bane Chant 2. And as long as you're not using it on poor old Sticky, may he ever be remembered. My old Blight Lord from the previous edition.
You know Veil of Shadows is an aura, Hugh?
Yeah.
Okay. Because you'll cast it on himself and then spit out a whole bunch of stealthy. So if you are going up against your gunline mate and you've got rats, Veil of Shadows is alright.
Yeah, you'll give a bubble of stealthy to a section of your army. That's correct. And then it'll just shoot other bits.
Unless you give him that item that increases the aura range. That's almost like 2/3 of your army then.
You reckon? You're fitting 2/3 of a Ratkin army inside that aura?
18-inch diameter?
Nah. Maybe half of it. Maybe most of your important stuff. I'll give you that. But it's a gimmick. It's very gimmicky. It's a lot of points. It's crap. Forget about it. Hex is even worse. Heal 4.
Take them both then.
30 points feels like a lot to pay for heal 4, especially without a lot of other healing in the army. I feel like if you want to heal, take the Broodmother.
Yeah.
Because that's what she does. Like, that's her shtick. So take the Broodmother. Don't know really why you take heal on the Warlock. Remember, you're paying 90 points for a unit with Lightning 5. So taking them 120 points to heal something on average 2 points in an army that's mainly defense 4. Unsure why the options... Like, I love having the options, but the option needs to be cheaper for it to be worth considering. But Bane Chant 3 is fantastic. I nearly always take that. There's so many things in the army with Crushing 1 that get so much better with Crushing 2. And even your average idiots with spears and stuff that are crushing nothing suddenly become something resembling a threat if they have Crushing 1, which is not too bad.
And 3 means it'll be very likely for it to succeed.
That's right. It should reliably work a lot of the time. Of course, 1 in 8 times you'll still fail, but what are you going to do?
Then you throw the Conjuring Staff on him for 10 points and you're re-rolling one of those dice.
Yeah, and then you're up to 1 in 16 times. So only every third game where you actually fail to Bane Chant if you cast it every single turn. So that just becomes obscenely reliable at that 130 point price mark. It's really not bad. Plus you got a lightning to throw around if you want. So the Warlock's great. Mm-hmm. I'd take Bane Chant nearly always unless you're really, really skipping on points. In which case, why are you taking a 90-point Lightning Bolt Warlock when you could take a 95-point Claw Shot or a 90-point Shredder or whatever? Like, don't get me wrong, it's still useful, that 90-point Warlock, but he costs an unlock. For me, Bane Chant Inspiring Talisman tends to be the way I take him as default. 140 points, which is on the upper end of costly for a spellcaster, but he's speed 6. He's got very reliable spells. Very few other spellcasters can say, Lightning 5 and Bane Chant 3 and Inspiring on a reasonably nimble little body. He's a great little spellcaster. It's a bit weird that he's so good, actually. I feel like he should be crapper because he's better than an elf in lots of ways in terms of just his quality of spells. A lot of other spellcasters only have Lightning 3 or Bane Chant 2 or whatever.
That's usually the go.
I'm not really sure fluff-wise why the Warlock is as good and reliable a spellcaster as he is, but
OP
go
rats.
figure.
Yeah, I think you should have to pay for Hex and Veil of Shadows.
Yeah, you should be like swap Lightning Bolt for both Hex and Veil of Shadows, and then we might be talking about something that I might take every now and again.
What do we think about the boomstick on him? So get an extra 3 Lightning Bolt. So it would be Lightning Bolt 8 for 30
Yeah,
points.
if you want him to be a zappy boy, sure.
I think if I was taking a second Warlock, that's often the way I do it. I think the Inspiring Talisman just has so much value. If you had loads of Inspiring already, because of somehow your army structure's worked out that way, sure. But you tend to be a fairly spread out, hoardy kind of army. Inspiring is so critical on your fairly low defense, fairly low nerve kind of units. Mm-hmm. That 20 points just is solid gold. And often I find if you're taking an uninspiring hero in Ratkin, you kind of need to justify it. Why am I not taking an inspiring hero for a similar kind of value? Because just inspiring, for me anyway, maybe I overrate it. Maybe I'm a bit more defensive as a kind of a player and rate those things a lot. Because I know some people are just like, bugger inspiring, don't need it, that kind of thing. Yeah. But that's never really been the way that I prefer to play. So for my playstyle, Inspiring Talisman. But second Warlock with a boomstick, hell yeah, sign me up. I don't think I've ever actually taken it, but I've definitely bopped him in a list a bunch of times, and then he's ended up getting trimmed for something else.
All right. So what's next?
War Chief, what do you got?
Chief of War. Speed 6, melee 3, defense 5. This is your big, nasty, choppy character, in theory.
But he's still only infantry base, so it's not that big.
Small, chubby character. I don't know. He's
Big
your
at heart.
general kind of equivalent. He's got 5 attacks, 11, 13 nerve, which is pretty bad for this kind of thing, which I think it fits the Ratkin theme nicely. 85 points, so he's pretty cheap.
Yep.
Crush 1, individual, inspiring, mighty. Debatable, that last one. I mean, the rule's not debatable.
Depends on how many Weet-Bix
whether he actually is mighty or not. It's very debatable indeed. I've been trying him in low points games a little bit. I'm finding him to be...
I like him, especially on a Fleabag.
Yeah, I think the Fleabag option's great. It is 35 points. Man, you pay a lot for mounts these days.
Rich, yeah.
But it brings him up to 120. Very fast inspiring source, can get sort of wherever he needs to be, which is nice. But 5 attacks, 3 to hit, crush 1 is pretty poor. You're only really expecting him to put an extra wound or 2 on something. To a degree, he can threaten war machines, but there is another character which is probably better at threatening war machines.
I think he's excellent at grounding flyers.
Yep, for sure.
And protecting any unit that is about to get killed because of that mighty. So he just becomes a very, very mobile chaff unit in that role.
Yeah, that's probably the way to think of him, actually. And he inspires at the same time. So he's okay. I know you really like your super mobile chaff Fleabag kind of units more than most people, Benson.
Just one. Just need one.
I don't think you need one at all, but I think
do.
he's okay. I think he's an option. You've got other chaff units. Like the army's full of chaff units. You don't necessarily need 120.1. Most people will still go through him in one round. I say people, most nasty hammer units will still easily go through him in one round. He's only 11, 13 nerve, which is fine for a chaff unit, of course, but you are paying 120 points for him. I don't know.
And he keeps up with your regiment of hackpaws and your tunnel runners as well.
Yes, he does. So he offers inspiring. I think you take the war chief for me when you... I think he becomes a much more attractive option when you don't take the demon. I know I keep mentioning the demon. He's a very important part of the list, and we'll get to him eventually with an unpronounceable name. But if you don't take your demon, you don't have one of those fast, inspiring sources, and you need someone, say you have a flank, a bit like I've described a few times already, where you've got a unit of tunnel runners, maybe a unit of hackpaws, maybe you've got a Death Engine Impaler out there. I think having one of these guys on a Fleabag is excellent to do exactly as Benson says, to chaff up, but also just to run around and inspire that unit and keep up with them and add an extra wound or 2 to the combat to boot, and maybe even threaten the war machine at some point in the game and not have to commit one of those units to it. So in that kind of role, he's excellent. However, the demon does that role so much better.
Yeah, but the demon's 225 points or more.
The demon costs a lot of points, absolutely. But that's another reason why you're not likely to see this guy in an army with the demon, because he costs so many points.
Yeah.
You're going to find yourself stretched in other places, and this guy is often one of the first things to fall off the side of your army list.
Yeah.
I like the War Chief. Mournful Blade works well. Or even just if you're keeping him cheap, just to reroll to hit or reroll to wound in combat, just to make sure when he hits a flyer that he's grounding it.
Yeah, I think you got 5 points left over. I'd definitely slap one of those on him. Why not?
Yeah, reroll to wound for me if you're going to use him as a flyer grounder. So he's got 5 attacks hitting on 3s. You just need help with the wounding. So.
And a lot of flyers are defense 5.
Statistically, either one would be identical, but sure. Pretty much, right?
Or hitting on 3s or wounding on 5s. Or 4s, I guess.
4s most of the time, yeah. Your reroll is actually more likely on your roll to hit, because the reroll is more likely to result in a hit.
Yeah, well, I don't feel like I'm doing something when I wound.
It's exactly the same. Just take either, guys.
It's the psychology.
It doesn't matter.
Extra 16.7%, everyone. Yes.
All right, let's go the Cryboy.
Crybaby, Swarm Crier. He is speed 6, melee 5, defense 4, 1 attack, 8-10 nerve, individual inspiring. He's just a bloke that holds a flag, like virtually every other army has, if not every single other army. One of the small things that he's slightly better than other armies at is that move 6. I know that's kind of across the board for Ratkin, but
45 points for a speed 6 dude's pretty good.
It's really fine, yeah, because obviously you can move 12 if you move at the double, and being individual makes him very swift. He gets where he needs to be with that flag, and he waves it around. For 25 points, you can give him a Fleabag. I've never ever done that, but honestly, it's not the worst option in the end in the world. He's still 70 points altogether, and maybe if you're feeling in that scenario I've just described where you might take a war chief, one of these on a fleabag does most of what the war chief does. It's just that he can't realistically threaten a flyer or a war machine or anything else which the war chief can do.
He's not chaff at all because you just walk right through him. He doesn't do anything. You have to be quite specific in your placement, and
That's true.
It's just a shame this guy doesn't have Radiant of Life Swarm or an ability to cry and make swarms appear.
Yeah, that would be much better, wouldn't it?
Or if a swarm dies, he gets upset and then he gets like
Especially
2 attacks.
appropriate for my miniature, which is that guy waving a stick and it's like just covered in rats.
Got rats all over it, yeah. He's a stock standard infantry banner bearer, so works well.
He's a 45-point inspiring choice, so he's excellent. You'll see him in a lot of different lists. It's just like, I need a little bit more inspiring in my list. He's the cheapest option to do it. He's going to get slotted in there often.
Yeah,
Nothing wrong with him. Nothing particularly exciting about him either. Loot of Insatiable Darkness is a great choice on him because it's 65 points. When you compare to that Warlock I was talking about before, once you pay for Bane Chant and the Inspiring, so you're in sort of a similar place there, he's 140 points. This bloke's only Bane Chant 2, but he's doing it for 65. That's 75 points less. That's so much less. So anytime your Warlock is walking behind your unit, giving it Inspiring in the sense of Inspiring Talisman, and chucking a Bane Chant on it, he's doing almost precisely the same job for 75 points more than a Swarm Crier could do it. So bear that in mind. Whacking one of him in with a loot, and then the Warlock with the that Warlock I described earlier, because he's still good. He's still got lightning and all that stuff. I think that's a really nice little pairing, and those two find their way into my lists a lot.
I'm just comparing this guy to the Goblin Flag Waver. He's 5 points more for 1 extra speed. Otherwise, they're identical. So I think that's pretty good value.
Yeah, I'd pay that 5 points for the speed.
Yeah.
It really matters to get that inspiring where you need it.
All right, let's move on to some bigger boys. We'll start off with the Night Terror. Guy in your sleep, he gives you bad dreams. This guy's a large cavalry, height 3, speed 9, which is nice. Melee 3, defense 5, unit strength 1, because he's large cav, 5 attacks, 12-14 on the nerve at 135 points. He's not inspirational, but he does have crushing 2 and is nimble. So he's quick beater. Give him the talisman if no one else has got it, and then he can run with the other guys and be more of a threat than the war chief.
He's a lot like a werewolf character.
Yeah.
Quite similar.
Without the regen.
And the nerf.
No regen, and he doesn't. Werewolf characters inspire werewolves, I believe. They inspire
Yes.
other lichens, whatever. So, another red hot contender for that inspiring talisman. So you can tell that's quite a desirable item. And I've found myself with lists with one of these guys and a warlock in it, and not sure which guy to put that talisman on. I really rate that talisman highly in Ratkin.
You could also just give this guy self-inspiration and have him running off doing his own thing.
True. And defense 5, 12, 14 nerve, if he was self-inspired, against a lot of small units that you find on flanks and stuff, they definitely struggle to get through him in a charge. He's okay. He's hard to fit in. There's nothing really wrong with him. He's quite expensive for 5 attacks.
Yeah.
But he is fast.
But he's quite quick. That's it.
Yeah, you've got him, your war chief on mount, and also your master scurrier / assassin is what everyone's going to call him. Those are sort of your 3 relatively quick pseudo-choppy characters, somewhat choppy characters. Those are your 3 things that you could potentially use to threaten war machines and things like that in a meaningful way. And it's kind of up to taste, really, which one you prefer, I reckon. I don't think any of those 3 are particularly good units, but nor are they completely rubbish. So
Yeah.
take a pick. What do you reckon, Sellick? Would you ever use him?
Yeah, I don't think I would. And I think it all comes down to the points. I just think he's a touch, and I'm talking like 10, maybe 15 points overpriced. And I just have to keep going back to other lists, and I know that other lists aren't quite the same, but if you have a look at the Lycan Alpha, for example, so he's got extremely similar stat line. So I think he's 9-3 and 5 defense as well, 5 attacks. He's got slightly high nerve, and I expect that not being in the Ratkin list. But he's also got inspiring to, other alphas.
Which really matters.
But he's got Pathfinder and Regen as well, and he's only 30 points more. And I just think it fits their list, or like that list, a lot better than this list, in my opinion. But that's just where I'm at the moment. He doesn't fit anywhere in my terrors of the night.
Both Hackpaws and Tunnel Runners unlock, it's worth mentioning. So if you had a heap of regiments of them and you were taking this quite unusual Ratkin list, which just says bugger plague pots, bugger rallying, bugger hordes of rats. I'm just going to take this weird, like, cavalry force kind of list. Getting a few night terrors, a night terror or two in there, or one with the inspiring talisman is probably very likely. Seems pretty good.
I'd probably be using the war chief at that point if I was going to be running that sort of list. But
I think I prefer the war chief too. He's that little bit more. Well, he's not actually with 9 and nimble. I was going to say he's more mobile. He's not really. They're the same speed and nimble.
It's just because it's individual.
Individual. So you get that.
Individual's a little bit more mobile, but then again, Night Terror can threaten flanks and rears a little bit more than the War Chief can, on account of being large cav.
Yeah. You just get the extra points if you run the War Chief instead of the Night Terror. But
you can claim an objective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I completely agree. I feel like he's about 10 points more than he perhaps should be. Doesn't have a great role.
That's my brain said 10 at the start.
Which brings us to the most powerful unit in Kings of War.
The Brute Enforcer. He is a large infantry unit at speed 6.
No, I forgot about Brute Enforcer. I already skipped straight over him because he's such a potato.
This guy's so forgettable.
We're going to cover the poor Brute Enforcer. Speed 6, melee 3+, no range, and defense 5. Unit strength is 1 with only 3 attacks. 11-13 is his nerve, with a 75-point price tag there at height 3. Does have the special rules of brutal, crushing strength 2, nimble, and rallying 1, with the keywords abomination and tech. I don't know what tech is.
He's such a weird unit.
I kind of like this guy. I was just writing my list before, and I was thinking this guy's sitting behind your shock troops. And if he needs, if you could put the talisman on him, great. But he can duck out and charge whatever the shock troops are charging as well, and add slightly more punch to it, but giving the brutal as well.
Yeah, I think I've overlooked brutal when reading across this guy in the past. I've never taken this guy before, but I agree with you. Brutal's actually a really cool ability to have to add to a unit. Being large infantry is like a straight up disadvantage for this guy. I feel like if he was an individual, that would be more helpful in terms of getting in the right position and stuff. But
because he can see over the shock troops, he can pivot, then hit, and then double charge anything. So he can stay safe behind your regiments and then come out and hit things if need be.
Yeah, with all 3 of his attacks.
Yeah, but then it's brutal on top.
Yeah, the brutal definitely makes him a lot better, and I admit I have overlooked that in the past. Crush 2, I mean, who cares? He hits 2 times and wounds 1 or 2 times, but then getting that extra brutal in. He's actually pretty reliably adding 2 points, basically, towards nearly every combat, right?
Yeah.
Every now and again, he'll add 3.
As a large infantry as well, with nimble, he can also shut down on the flanks. So he can shut down other people's attacks and being able to get out of combat.
Towards the end of the game, if he's still alive, he can just nimble out of there and add his unit strength to whatever.
Yeah, he's not inspiring, but he is rallying, which is quite nice. If you don't have a mutant rat fiend in your army or a Tangle, which we'll get to in a sec, which are the 2 other units that offer rallying outside of hordes, I could definitely see a place for him, because having that smaller footprint unit that can stand in between your hordes and make sure that all your hordes and things are getting rallying too is quite significant. Also, I should mention the demon has just rallying too built in. Yeah, I sort of see a place for him, but he's so in-betweeny. He's sort of in between everything else. I don't know.
So, Hugh, I think we have to go back to one of your comments earlier, is he doesn't have an inspiring, so you have to question why you're taking him.
Yeah.
I just told you.
To put 1 or 2 extra wounds into a combat.
Yeah, and then run off and do things at the end of the game.
Oh, well, you can do that cheaper.
With what?
With, his only unit strength 1, right?
That's all you need sometimes.
Sometimes it is, but you could spend an extra 10 points and get a unit strength 2 that will do similar amounts of wounds.
But it's not as maneuverable.
I know it's not as maneuverable, but it'll be more usable, I guess, in all of the other games.
Assuming you don't have the Inspiring Talisman somewhere else, what do you think of one with the Inspiring Talisman on him?
Well, I mean, you still have to question it, I guess, is...
No, I don't.
Yes, you do, yeah.
I said question it.
When compared to a Warlock with the Inspiring Talisman or the Swarm Crier with the Loot, who costs a bit less.
But again, different roles.
No, it's almost exactly the same role. It's the stand next to your big infantry and support it in some way.
And how does a Warlock or Swarm Crier get objectives? It doesn't.
They keep other people alive.
But if your big old fat infantry unit that you're standing next to, if you manage to support it well enough in order for it to survive the game, then they get the objectives, don't they?
Yeah, but they're not as maneuverable, as I said.
Who brought this guy?
Put it this way, I've never, ever, ever seen a Brute Enforcer on the table. There must be a reason for that.
No one else plays Ratkin.
We're going to find out in about
Other
20
people do.
minutes or
Other people
so
do.
that Benson's got 6 of these in his list or something.
Shush.
But...
I hope so. It sounds like a great list.
Hugh, who is the next guy and what does he do with his stick?
I'm going to tell you what, Benson, I'll take you up on the challenge before we move on to the most powerful unit in Kings of War. Against Tracy, best Kings of War player in the entire world, in case anyone doesn't realise. I have grudged him in a tournament in June.
It
Of
may
course,
not go ahead.
world events being as they are, that event may not go forward. But if it does, I'm playing the man himself round 1. And just for science, I will take a Brute Enforcer in my list.
Thank you. Make sure you play it how I imagined it should be played.
Okay, I'll try. Although it is Tracy, so he'll probably find a way to screw me over. That's okay. So I'm taking the Master Scurrier, aka Assassin, because Master Scurrier is a terrible name. Hero Infantry. He is speed 7, melee 3+, range 4+, defense 4+, 4 attacks, 10, 12 nerve, and 95 points. He's got crushing 1, duelist, hey, individual, scout, stealthy, vicious. He's got a blight pistol because they want you to take their futuristic looking pelican as your Master Scurrier. He's like this semi-cyborg rat that's a little bit like bowed over and he's got like a gun. It's like, forget about it. You want to, come on, man. So yeah, he's got ninja stars is what he's actually got. 12-inch range, piercing 1. I hope one day they release a Master Scurrier who looks like a cool Eshony assassin kind of thing. I get that they're trying to get away from the Games Workshop aesthetic in some places, but forget it. It's not 40k rats, for God's sake. This is a fantasy game.
Don't write it in the fluff that he's sneaking, goes on covert missions.
Exactly. If he's just this like hunking, like semi-mechanical big old rat with a big pistol, ridiculous.
Couldn't get through a metal detector.
This is from the lore. Most assassins will have learned their basic skills serving as scouts in the Scurrier teams. Those who show promise become Master Scurriers and are sent on near impossible missions to further own their lethal abilities.
Yeah, that miniature doesn't look like it's winning any impossible missions.
Not assassin.
Although, to be fair, Master Scurriers have a habit of fluffing impossible missions anyway, which is part of the joy of them. So 95 points. Have to compare to the last edition a little bit with this guy, just because obviously I took lists with 3 of them in it and stuff. And famous, infamous for running around Kings of War tables being not entirely useless, despite the big old splint that is having multiple assassins in your list. What they're useful for in this edition, I believe, they've got Duelist. They got a bit cheaper, which is awesome. They still don't have Ensnare, which I feel like would make them a really interesting unit. They could like hide in forest and get in the way of things, as well as attacking. Like Ensnare could be like smoke bombs or like traps or something that could be cool. But forget about it. It doesn't have that. Though Crush 1 and 5 and 4 attacks, not 5, but 4 attacks, that really does matter, especially with Duelist, means that they're actually, despite their assassiny ways, no good at taking out characters that are actually decent. So they kill wizards and stuff. They kill crap characters.
They don't kill them, they just stop them from casting spells for 2 turns.
Yeah, they quite often don't kill them on the charge. Maybe over 2 rounds of combat they might kill them.
Now with Duelist though, that's 8 attacks hitting on 3s with CS1.
Yeah, exactly.
But
so
you'll get what, 4, 5? So, like, I mean, you give yourself a good chance of knocking even a decent
there is a
character
chance. It's pretty dicey.
Yeah.
If you roll a decent nerve roll, yes, you'll get them. I mean, more often than not, they'll be inspired. You'll have to do it twice. It's pretty dicey. It's certainly, you're right. It's not impossible that they'll go through a wizard in a charge. I find that doesn't tend to happen.
No.
But, I mean, it's just part of their whole je ne sais quoi. It's part of their whole... It's Marbo. It's the vibe, you know. They go in, they miss with all their attacks, and then they stand there with their dicks in the wind. That's what assassins do. We know this. So it doesn't matter what their stats are in a way.
Apart from Stickman.
Aubergine Stickman.
But no, what they're quite good for is threatening war machines and making your opponent think. They have Scout and Movement 7, so you can move them 14 inches up the board at the start of or before the game die roll for first turn goes. And if anyone puts their war machine on the line or close to the line, particularly popular with a couple of factions anyway, moving 14 at the start of the game is going to make your opponent sweat for that die roll for first turn, right?
Yeah.
because if they lose it, they get to charge. I've done this quite a few times, and I've not yet to even once win the die roll for first turn in that scenario. But hey, at least I made my opponent sweat a bit.
Yeah, I think the stealthy and the scout does help a little bit, so you can always scout up into some trees and be at -2 to hit.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody shoots at them at -2. But
shout out to AG. I know you're listening to this, you big jerk. Last time I played him, AG, I was saying he's a big jerk because he like twice like rotated to face my assassin in the woods and just went, 7s to hit. Okay, well, I got 6 shots. Okay, that's 2 wounds, and you're wavered. And I'm like, what? Come on. You're like,
that is
so
BS.
I can't tell you how many times he's been like hit with a war machine, and the opponent's like, well, I got nothing else to shoot at. It's just funny. That's just the assassin's way. Like, they shouldn't get hit, but they do. Yeah, you're right though. You'll deter them, with the exception of certain jammy people who won't remain nameless, I guess. With the exception of that, generally people will go, "Oh yeah, it's an assassin in a forest. I'm going to not shoot that for obvious reasons." -3 to hit because you're individual as well. Yeah, you're not going to shoot that most of the time. But yeah, he gets around. He can fling sharp stuff at things. Forget about the blight pistol; it's not real. But he can fling some 4 attacks, range 4+, and pierce 1. And he is vicious, both on shooting and in combat. So he can quite reliably put out 1 or 2 damage with his shooting. Very similar to combat. Sometimes you'll find you want to charge. Sometimes you'll find you're happy just running around the flanks and just chucking a few ninja stars at things. And making your opponent think, making them think, is he going to, I need to position my wizard in this awkward spot that I don't necessarily want to put him, just so he's out of range of this assassin. Movement 7 rather than 6 really does matter here. And also, do I need to leave a unit back to protect my war machines or something like that? Because for 95 points, you don't mind sending him after a war machine or something. It's not like sending a dragon after a war machine, which is often a waste. It's actually not bad on an assassin. And I've been trying him a little bit with the wings of the honey maze as well, which puts him down to a pathetic defense 3. But that doesn't really matter if no one ever attacks him in the shooting phase. And yeah, going up to speed 10, you can just fly 20 inches up as part of your scout move, and then just make your opponent just looks at me and goes, "Oh, shit, I really got to think about this." Super powerful? No. Super fun for the Ratkin player? Hell yes. So taking 1 every now and again is great. Don't take 3 like me unless you're a complete lunatic.
2's the sweet spot.
No, 2 is not the sweet spot. Probably 0 is still the sweet spot, tragically. But if you're playing a lot of war machines in your meta, 1 is great. And Wings of the Honey Maze, if you've got enough points left over, is not a bad item on him. I don't think I'd really put anything else on him. Maybe a Blade of Slashing again if you've got 5 points kicking around, because he does only have 4 attacks, which is pretty pathetic. So even a lot of times he'll charge a war machine and not kill it, because 12 attacks, 3's to hit. He can just fluff it sometimes.
Yeah. I find that 95 points is a weird point level to start assigning magical artifacts.
Yeah.
Like, you're right. Like, if you give him the wings, it makes him more versatile and it gives him a couple of actual roles in your army. Same as if you put the wings on the war chief.
Boots of levitation, so he can move out the double and shoot.
Yeah, well, if you want to do that with 4 attacks,
it's quite a lot of points for your 4 shots. You're only gonna fling your sharp stuff maybe 2 times in the game.
Well, you're taking a Master Scoria. In for a penny, in for a pound.
But outside of the wings, do you think there's any other points cost, or what would you be capping your points cost at with this guy?
50.
Thanks, Benson.
Sword of Slashing.
Yeah, so like 5 point.
Crystal Pendant.
Crystal Pendant.
Boom. All right.
You're not shooting him.
Yeah. But he'll die against most things that charge him.
And then they explode.
If your opponent's clever and they charge him with like their regiment of meathead pole arms or something like that, and then you blow up on them and do a bunch of damage, you'd be like, yeah. So your guy just got 150.
So it sounds like Wings of Honey Maids.
Aside from the wings, maybe 20 points, I think. Yeah. Or just 5, yeah.
Yeah, if you've got points left over and you don't want to give plague pots to anything, or you can't, or whatever, however your army list is ending up, Sword of Slashing, Wings of the Honey Maze, and then if you've got loads of points left over or you're feeling like a real troll, Crystal Pendant.
Boom.
Okay, so we're on to the last section here, the unique units for the Ratkin. First up, we have the Tangle. This is a Titan spellcaster 0, so you can't hex it. Height 3. Well, he's on a Titan base anyway. Speed 5, melee 4, defense 4, unit strength 1, 9 attacks, fearless 14 at 160 points, and this Tangle Has an aura of fury. It inspires. It's also nimble and spits out some rallying 1. Strangely, regen 6 and is vicious in melee. So what the Tangle also does is for each friendly corps, infantry, regiment, horde, legion, with the vermin keyword, which we established earlier isn't much, you can increase your dice for your Bane Chant, Fireball, and Mind Fog and Weakness, which are the 4 spells that he has built in, by 1 to a maximum of 3. So he starts off with Bane Chant 1, Fireball 10, Mind Fog 1, Weakness 1, but if you have enough of the vermin around, you can get up to Bane Chant 4, Mind Fog 4, Weakness 4, just to make sure that those things are going off. You probably don't need that much.
Yeah, it's not just vermin, to be clear. It's also in any core infantry regiment
or
horde,
unit with... Okay, right.
or unit with vermin, yeah. So basically that means any regiment or horde that's nearby.
Or the rats.
Yeah.
Plus
or the swarm.
the little rat units, yeah.
I guess also the isn't the big boy vermin as well? The mutant rat fiend? Yeah.
Yes. And I found, so in my CanCon list, I took one of these guys and also a mutant rat fiend, plus a couple of hordes of shock troops. And I found that as a center was super duper tough because, yeah, everything's got rallying too. He's usually casting Bane Chant 4, Mind Fog 4, Weakness 4, or Fireball 13. Every now and again something moves out of range or whatever and he's only adding 1 or 2, but a lot of the time he's adding that. The extra height is a double-edged sword because...
Can be seen and can see others.
He can be seen, but you can also use that... And you actually find that you use Mind Fog and Weakness and stuff every now and again because in those early turns of the game, you're out of range of Fireball and Bane Chant potentially, or you don't have a use for it. So you fling out a couple of those other spells, in which case it's nice to be height 3. You can see over your hordes and stuff because you don't want this guy on the front line, obviously. He's a support unit. I never once remembered Regen 6+. It's funny, as you're reading that out, I'm like, what the fuck? He's got Regen 6+?
It has regen?
Yeah. Never once remembered that. Probably would have come in handy every now and again. One of the weirdest things about this unit is it's a wizard that can take a hit. Nerve 14, and because of where it hangs out with all its friends and stuff, it's again often rallied. So when you've got like a dash 16 wizard, it can actually take a charge from something and hold every now and again and be a little tar pit, which is quite a weird little perk. And then it dishes out 9 attacks back, which is a non-zero amount of attacks, like they're weak attacks.
Surprising.
Yeah, still not sure on the Tangle for me. His point costs and what he actually does as a support character, it's like you can do it cheaper.
You definitely can do it cheaper. He's a weird unit because when you compare to most of the characters so far, with the exception of the Scurrier and I suppose the Night Terror to an extent as well, they've been support characters one way or another. And this guy, like for his 160, it's quite similar, in comparison to a Broodmother or a Warlock, what one of those characters might be doing. His spells are very reliable, which is interesting. And he also doubles as like a mini war machine with that Fireball. And I find that when I had him I had 2 weapon teams as well. So that center meant that he could threaten with his Fireball. He could chuck out a Weakness every now and again, which was handy. Every now and again, he might need to reach out and touch something with Mind Fog to make it run. So you pay a lot for that versatility. He brings all those things to the table that a Warlock or a Broodmother doesn't. But then when he's just standing behind something, giving it Inspiring and chucking a Bane Chant into it, you could be doing that in fairness with a Warlock, or even more cheaply with a Swarm Cry, with the Bane with the loot.
Yeah, but this guy, with all his spells, can't be hexed.
That's true.
Yeah, which is so...
No wonder he's 160 points.
Also, let's not forget Aura Fury, and this I thought would be rad. I played one practice game against Viv. Those of you who listen to the CanCon cast, which probably is many of you, would remember that I played him in a game beforehand, and then all that banter and whatever between myself and Viv. In that game against Viv, Fury was clutch. Like, he went in, and admittedly, I still think, in theory, at least on paper, it seems pretty good, because the shock troops, you so rely on that counterpunch, as I've spoken about a couple of times. When you've got this really solid center, you want to be able to take a hit, potentially heal a little bit, certainly countercharge and put in a bunch of pain. As we all know, when you're taking like multiple hordes of infantry or something, if they get wavered at the wrong time, it's a major, major setback. It could even be like game over. They go in and then they roll like 10 on the nerve. You don't get to re-roll it despite all your, all the points you've invested in rallying and inspiring and all that kind of thing. Sometimes even, and this does happen with rallying. Rallying can be surprisingly a double-edged sword, where you're like, someone rolls a high nerve, they spike the nerve, and if you didn't have rallying, you would break and therefore get to reroll as a result of inspiring. But because you do have rallying, it takes your value up just that little bit higher, and then you waver. And sometimes that waver is even worse than breaking, and obviously you don't get to re-roll the waver. And this has happened to me countless times. Every Ratkin player has felt the pain of this. And you actually say, oh, crap, he's rallying. No. No, it means he's wavered. Oh, no, it means the whole battle line can't move forward. It means they can't countercharge. It's a disaster. So for that reason, Aura 6-inch on a wide base is a massive range, that Aura 6-inch, giving everything Fury. Sounds super rad, but I admit not once in CanCon, not once did that Aura Fury come up. It could have, just the way the dice fell, it didn't. But I don't know. It's such a versatile unit. I really still am, as you can probably tell from everything I've said about it, like on the fence about the tangle.
Got a soft spot.
Because you're right, Sellick, it is expensive. But God, it's such a versatile piece.
Well, next up, we've got the Crying Mother, the Mother Chrysler, which is a large infantry spellcaster of 3, so can be hexed, Benson,
nice.
with a height of 3 as well. So speed 6, melee 3+, defense 5. It's got a unit strength of 1, 5 attacks, nerve is 13-15 on 165 points. Special rules comes with
The Cloak of Death.
crushing strength 1, ensnare, inspiring, nimble and stealthy. It's got lightning bolt 5 with a couple of options. It's got bane chant 3 for 30 points. We've got blood boil 1, obviously for 20 points, and veil of shadows 2 for 25 points as well. And it's got the keywords brood mother and Ratkin and tech.
So this is a fancy brood
It
mother.
it is.
Yeah, with a completely different role to a normal broodmother, which is weird.
Because of the Cloak of Death. And no drain life. So very offensive.
It's lightning bolt instead. So much longer range, more of an offensive unit. Cloak of Death is great.
It's more of a combat thing because of the ensnare as well.
That's right. The most important rule on this figure, I think, is ensnare. It's got a lot of stuff going on, and the Cloak of Death is really good as well. I've taken this most recently in that list, which I was talking about before, which I took recently to a tournament, which was quite weak, and taking a bunch of the things that I don't normally take, including this unit, the Mother Chrysler. Instead of being that kind of horde infantry march forward counterpunch kind of list, it was more, as I think I've mentioned as well, like this kind of short range firepower kind of list that had a lot of breath weapony kind of equivalents and a lot of ways to jam up your opponent and annoy them, and just tries to sort of stay that 12-18-inch range, put a heap of wounds on things, and then move in and finish it off. At least that's the theory of the list, and take a charge every now and again. So Mother Chrysler's role in that is move forward, preferably in a forest, get in the way of something, and then go, yep, I've got a fairly high nerve, and as we all know, ensnared things when your opponent's impeded, which is a relatively easy thing to orchestrate with a only large infantry base. You've got a small footprint. The theory there is that she can take charges all day, and she can fling lightning bolt if your opponent ignores her. Getting the Bane Chant for an extra 30 points seems okay, but I didn't do it because she's going up to nearly 200 points then. She costs so many points for something that doesn't do much damage. Yeah, I don't know. Defense 5 is nice. It's still not a great unit, and honestly, a regular broodmother is probably going to serve you better a lot of the time. You really need to be taking advantage of that ensnare and that Cloak of Death and getting a lot of value out of that in order to make this a worthwhile choice.
Yeah. Seems like another one of those units that's trying to do two things and you're paying for it. So you're trying to get on the front line and take a charge and tie up a unit. At the same time, you're trying to cast. And I just think
Same time, you're trying to stand back, flow lightning, and inspire. Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
I just think that if you just stop and go, well, what do I need my list to do? You'll be able to do it probably about, 50, 60 points cheaper and just do it better.
Very true. I think in a gun line, though, I think that Mother Chrysler does have a bit of a niche. So there's a lot of ways to take Ratkin. We've talked about the counterpunch list sort of with a lot of heavy infantry kind of things. I still personally think this is the most powerful way of taking them. Taking like a really cavalry heavy one, I guess, is an option, although it'd be a bit weird. Why aren't you taking a different list? This kind of short range shooting one, or you can also take a gun-liney kind of list with a lot of claw shots, shredders, lots of lightning and stuff like that. And in that list, I think she's got a slot because, yes, she costs more than a warlock or other lightning-related things, but she can stand in front of something and hold it up for days and plink a lot of wounds on stuff and keep disengaging from combat, not striking again, so the opponent has to charge into you, Hopefully they're impeded again. Hopefully they got ensnare and you can just keep shooting at them. And I think that's what she's for.
I think because she's a bit more of an anvil here because of the ensnare and the defense 5, having another mum about draining and healing Mum Chrysler would be a good combo.
Yeah, it could be. Again, it's a bit clunky and it's a lot of points for not a huge amount of effect, but I think that has a niche kind of place. Yeah, I feel like she doesn't really read that way, but I feel like she's probably a gunline style army list unit. But even then, I'm trying pretty hard to say. You can probably tell from the tone of my voice that I don't think she's red hot. Any listeners who've had a lot of success with Mother Chrysler, I'd be interested in, because she's an interesting unit. She's a weird unit, a bit different.
Yeah, send us a Facebook or Twitter message and we'll get back to you.
So Hugh, why don't you tell us about something that you love?
Scuddy.
Okay, Scuddy, a.k.a. Skudkuzluk, demon spawn of Dew.
Skudkuzluk.
Scuddy.
Skudkuzluk. Why?
Skudkuzluk.
I guess it's just a fantasy trope to give demons like super unpronounceable kind of names, right? Like it's kind of part of their shtick.
Yeah, guttural.
So it's the Scuddy.
Scuddy.
Scuddo.
The Scud missile.
Scuddo.
Scuddo.
Vermin Lord. Scuddy. Scud, what's up?
The Dewy demon.
Anyway, he's a Titan. So his base got a lot larger recently. Don't use an old base. Don't screw people over. He's got speed 10 because he's a flyer. He comes with wings now. You no longer have to upgrade him to it, which you just do every time anyway. Speed 10, melee 3+, defense 5+. Unit strength 1, of course. 17, 19 nerve, which is pretty nice. 345 points.
Height 6.
Costs a lot. Yeah, he's super tall because he's a Titan. Yeah, so you can see over everything in the army with the exception of the Mutant Rat Fiend, which is also a Titan. But he has Crush 3, so he just wins everything on 2s pretty much. He has Fly, Inspiring, Nimble, and Rallying 2. So he's a really good Inspirer, more so than even other dragons and other Lord equivalents. So he costs a huge number of points. But what you need to understand, and he's got Lightning Bolt 5, so he's got like a little shooting thing thrown in there as well, because why not? You might fling that about every now and again, move him 10.
Can't be hexed though.
Yeah, move him 10, rotate him, Lightning Bolt, can't be hexed for some insane reason, because they just hate hex for some reason. Maybe it was really OP in playtest, and they're like, we've got to do something about this. Let's nerf it into oblivion.
I don't understand how that's...
Yeah, how is he not hexable? He's like a thing of magic and everything else. But what I really like to draw people's attention to about this demon spawn versus every other giant dragon and flying monstrosity and demon lord and whatever else in the game is two things. One, he's got rallying, so he holds a flank so nicely. In all these kinds of lists I've talked about with this really solid center with a bunch of shock troops and a bunch of rallying and inspiring and whatever around. Where you don't have a lot of that in your Ratkin army is on your flanks, because you've got either regiments there or you've got your faster cavalry things and stuff, and all of that stuff doesn't have rallying and doesn't have a lot of nerve to begin with. Often it's quite low defense as well. He can stand nearby them and offer rallying to and inspiring at the same time, and he can put that aura wherever he really likes by flying around to do it. So that's something that a lot of other dragons and things don't have. They've got inspiring, but not that rallying too. +2 to nerve is no joke. But then the other thing, which is even more important, he has 13 attacks. Sacred number, bitches. Shove that up you. Yeah, so 13 attacks at melee 3 and crush 2. Sorry, crush 3. He is incredibly reliable. So many other dragons and stuff out there have like 8 to 10 attacks. You know, they're almost always melee 3, very occasionally, I guess, melee 4. But they have that sort of profile where they're going to hit sort of between 5 and 8 times. This guy reliably hits like he gets 9 or 10 wounds on something, like so often in the front. That's just incredible. And like he can fly around and hit things in the... Obviously he can do what every dragon can do, like fly 20 and pivot. He can also move 10, chuck a lightning bolt out, inspire stuff for a few turns, and then go in when the time is right. Incredible unit, incredibly expensive, but justifiably so. I think he brings so much to the Ratkin that they just don't otherwise have. He's very fast and very hitty, which pretty much nothing else is. Their closest thing, I suppose, is their tunnel runners, but the tunnel runners obviously don't fly. They're only movement 8, not 10. They don't hit nearly as hard. They don't inspire. They don't rally. They don't shoot. So where we've talked about other units sort of doing everything and paying the cost for it, he does too, but instead of doing everything averagely he does everything extremely well. So you've got your Horde army, more so than other armies. You can sometimes afford this 345 point unit. I'm always trying lately, really, I've been trying to take lists without him because I feel like he's such a crutch. He's just that good. 13 attacks, like, oh, you hit something in the flank. Well, it's just dead. Delete. Take it off.
You said 13 is the sacred number. If you hit someone in the flank, is it worse because it's no longer sacred? It's 26.
Double sacred, baby. Double sacred.
Super
Don't worry about it. Just if you multiply something, the sacredness of something, then it doesn't get less sacred.
It's more sacred.
Does it?
Well, it's 13 twice. It's not 26.
But it's also
if you build
like...
a temple and then you build another temple that's twice as big, is it less sacred? Hell no. I rest my case. Anyway, Demon Lord, he's a beast. Bring him out if you want to win games of Kings of War. But don't, if you have brought him out, for heaven's sake, don't commit him too early. Use some of his abilities by flying around, giving inspiring, giving all that kind of stuff, chucking some lightning bolts around. And if you want to overload a flank with him and some other fast units to be friends with, he does that very effectively. If you have him behind your opponent's line on about turn 4, where his sort of, you've left your army up to its own devices at that point, hopefully you've got other inspiring around, you're probably in a good place. And I just find that in a Ratkin list at 2,000 points, if this guy's on the table at the end of the game, I've probably won.
Mm.
If he's dead on turn 2, it's going to be a struggle. Let's be honest.
That's a good chunk of your army gone.
Yeah, it is indeed. And sometimes you play like enough war machines and they just take him off super fast. There's nothing you could do or whatever. But if you position him cleverly and you play with him smartly, he'll do what every other dragon does, only better.
All right, how about we take a break there, and then when we come back, we'll discuss if there's any allies that could be useful, and then we'll go through some example lists.
Sounds good.
With the biggest brutes he had created, Bazak reasserted his authority and quickly rose back to a position of power even greater than before. Over the years that followed, the Ratkin became a commonplace sight in the slave dens, and their endless supply saw them sacrificed, tortured, maimed, worked, and discarded in inconceivable numbers. The Ratkin were bred for oppression, and were thus cruelly exploited. But they thrive in adversity. The darkest, most miserable places in the world are the domain of rats. They watched, they learned, they plotted and schemed.
And we're back. Time to go through some allies. Do Ratkin need allies? If so, which ones?
Oh, I don't think they need any.
Okay. No, they're OP. Anything that you take is just reducing the strength of the army. That's
complete rubbish. They're a largely low movement army. You can take fast stuff.
OP.
But they're not a super fast army. I suppose they're middle speed. They're not exactly slow, but relatively low defense, relatively low nerve. So things that are either very fast or very tough are a nice thing to ally in, I reckon. I mean, I don't generally do allies just as a rule of thumb, not really because, not really for any reason. I just prefer to have the army look aesthetically looking all, the same kind of vibe. But I've been toying with the idea of taking a couple of regiments of centaurs because they give you that speedy reach, which Ratkin kind of lack. Hackpaws have it to an extent, but then really suffer from terrain, which centaurs don't. So that's kind of an interesting one, but I think I wouldn't exactly recommend that as a highly powerful option. I just kind of like the idea of it. But like stone golems and things like that are pretty nice little, if you want to sort of get as powerful as possible, or like ogre shooters to make your gun line.
No,
can you still take
them
or not?
No.
Oh, they're irregular now.
Yeah.
Anything with a lot of defense or a huge amount of speed is probably the holes, as it were, in the Ratkin list that could be filled. Or anything that's a really hardcore can opener, because with the exception of the demon and to a degree, what did we say, the impaler, which you'll only take in the occasional list, you don't have a lot that just has like a really high crushing value or something. So sometimes Ratkin can struggle against lists that have a lot of defense 6 and things like that.
Do you think the centaurs are worth, though? Because they've only got 12 attacks and still defense 4. I mean, they have Pathfinder, but it's only 12 attacks.
Do I think they're really worth... Maybe not. Like, I suppose what I'm talking about in terms of something that's really fast or really tough or really heavy can opener, that's more if you want to take a powerful ally choice. I like the idea of having centaurs. I feel like it's the fluff of like the Ratkin getting pushed out of the Chaos Dwarf sort of evil minds and whatever, and trying to find a home somewhere in the forest or something, and like befriending
some horse people.
Not exactly making best friends with centaurs, but like mutually protecting their adopted home and having some centaurs sort of come out the woods and fight on their behalf of something isn't entirely beyond the realms of reality. I feel like allying with Chaos Dwarfs, on the other hand, is completely anti-fluff, but could be, reasonably good. I mean, I suppose you could just excuse it by saying you're playing Ratkin slaves without using the Ratkin slave list.
Yeah.
In which case, just use the Ratkin slave list. Get over yourself, seriously. But yeah, a lot of dwarf-style units are probably a nice kind of, like, really tough units are kind of nice things to have in a Ratkin list.
Earth Elementals, if you don't want to go the Abyssal Dwarf route.
Earth Elementals, I guess, or...
any of the Elementals, really.
Yeah, anything that's just super, super tough. And just, like, cavalry that hit really hard is kind of a thing that... They always used to completely lack it. Now that they've increased the speed of both the Impaler and also the Tunnel Runners, I feel like it's less of a need, as it used to just be completely absent from the list outside the Demon, which made him even more essential. But now that they've got a bit of extra speed and punch, they don't need that as much. But hey, yeah, something like that, I guess, if you really want to have allies.
Well, for 275 points, you can get a regiment of Rabble and a Mincer Mob regiment as well.
They're not very fast, but...
They're not very fast, but they've got that defense 6 in the front and a little bit of a can opener type roll.
Yeah, I could see that.
And they've got a big threat.
With the Mincer Mob regiments, you have to take an item with them, otherwise they're just very bland and don't do a whole lot. Because they're only speed 5, they usually get in charge, and when they get in charge by something that can take them out, and it's only 14-16.
Having something slower than your speed 6 main line as well is probably a bit of a disadvantage, even if it's just speed 5 versus 6. That does matter.
Apologies for the interjection, but just while I was editing, I noticed that we gave you some incorrect information. The Mincer Mob unit is actually irregular, so it can't be taken as allies. Maybe a bit of punch, take some Varangar mounted sons of Korgan.
Yep, could say that for sure. But nah, just take Ratkin. Be a man.
Just take Rats.
Take all Ratkin. Or a woman of steely determination.
Be a person of worth.
That's right, be a person of worth.
All right, let's go through some lists. Now, did you want to set the bar, Hugh, and go through yours, or do you want to... We want us to go first and you show us the light afterwards.
I don't know. I don't know if I can necessarily show you the light.
I don't know. You're the best Ratkin player in Australia, according to the ladder.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Me and the other 2 people that play Ratkin. Yeah, you guys go first. You guys. I'm trying to find the list anyway. I can't seem to find it.
I'll go through my joke list, then Sellick, you can go through your proper list. I'll go through my proper list, and then we'll end up with Hugh. So we'll go talking about ranged abilities here, and I thought, Ratkin can do that pretty well. So I've got 2 hordes of warriors. One of them's got the Diadem of Dragonkind. These are for the unlocks. I've also got 1 horde of Nightmares, because they're dudes that shoot, and they're a horde. And then I've taken 3 troops of Clawshots. I've also got 5 regiments of Vermintide, to block up anything that can charge him. They get in combat, they'll just disengage. I've also got 3 Shredders, 2 Death Engine Spewers, a Warlock, and a Swarm Crier with a Boomstick for that little bit of inspiring.
So that's your gunline list, huh?
Yeah, that's just get in the way, disengage, shoot, disengage, shoot. So it's pretty rubbish. There you go, that's how it can be done.
I don't know, it doesn't sound that rubbish.
Yeah, it'd still be competitive.
It'd be awful to play. You're just standing there doing nothing, rolling dice until either you die or they die.
That's gun lines though, man. That just is how it is, right?
That's how it works.
But if you want a gun line, that's one way to do it.
At least you got a lot of maneuverable chaff and stuff.
I still don't like it. Anyway, what do you got, Sellick?
Alright, so mine's probably equally as crap, but we'll see how we go. So I went with 2 vanilla regiments of warriors, just as some unlocks. 2 more regiments of spear warriors, just as a more defensive type deployment unlocks. Then a bit more of a hammer/anvil with the shock troops. So I've got 2 hordes, both with plague pots, one with elite, one with vicious. Then I've got my hack paws with brutal. So the way that my head was thinking about using these is just to get in there, just to cement a win of a combat. And hopefully, if you can get those guys in a flank, I think they'll do all right. Then I went for a bit of a weird combination here. So I've got a regiment of Vermintide, a horde of Vermintide with the Mead of Madness, so the extra +1. So they'll be D3 +1 on their random charge. Then I've got a mutant rat fiend.
Nice.
And a brood mother in there. So my combination of those guys was to be able to keep the mutant rat fiend alive by the regiment and keep him buffed up with the brood mother. So that was my sort of little combo there. Chuck in the shredder there as well. I think that'll be helping out. And my army severely lacked some more reliable inspiring for the 4 regiments that I've got. So I've got 2 Cries of the Swarm, just for like 90 points for the 2 of them, so they can just hang out behind the 2 units.
2 swarm babies. I was about to say, where's your inspiring at? Yeah, but yeah, a couple of swarm babies.
It's just literally those 4, I can sort of should just tie things up nicely, I think. And just with the inspiring, hoping to stick around, and then the shock troops will do most of the damage. And yeah.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty solid list, give or take all that Vermintide nonsense. Still sounds, pretty good.
Method to the madness.
All right. And now the list that I would take if I had the staff would be something like a horde of spear warriors with plague pots and pipes of terror for brittle, and just a regiment of spear warriors with pots. That's just the deterrent there. Horde of shock troops kitted to the back teeth with the halberds, pots, and brew of strength, just to make them super bashy.
Nice.
I've also got just some claw shots with piercing arrow, just to make sure that things are going off. 2 regiments of Vermintide to stall. I've also got a regiment of tunnel runners with the brew of sharpness, with that extra ouch.
Nice.
And they're going to be assisted with a troop of hack paws, and they'll be the chaff, just to make sure that nothing charges the tunnel runners, and that they can charge whatever they want. For the combat side, I've got a mutant rat fiend who's going to sit around with the shock troops, and I've got 2 weapon teams dicking about doing their weapon team thing.
Cool.
For support, we've got a brood mum with the boots of levitation, so she can zip about where she needs to be.
Oh, cool.
Swarm cry with Fainchant, and a night terror who inspires. So that'll be running with the cav.
Makes sense. Yeah, that seems pretty cool. Yeah,
Bit of everything.
Versatile, bit of everything kind of list. Awesome.
Not too scary.
Yeah, the sort of quite a middling mixed arms kind of affair. I like it. Cool. All right, well...
And I've still got 30 points left over.
Oh dear. The list that I was going to talk about was my CanCon list, because I'm restricted to a degree by what figures I've got available and, as anyone is when they build their army. So I always build army lists with a view to what I can actually field rather than being like, 7 hordes of shock troops or whatever. So, taking that into account within the confines of my fairly large Ratkin army, I think I still stand by this probably being pretty close to the most powerful 2,000 point list I could field. And I definitely think CanCon bore out that as a result. I only lost 1 game in that event, and it was against an extremely powerful undead army, and I had a lot of poor dice in the game. So I think, notwithstanding that 1 glitch, I think this particular list has performed very well for me and is significantly better than, say, some of these other lists that I've talked about over the course of the podcast, like that previous one I took to, with all the weird shooting elements and stuff. So I'm pretty sure I can recite it more or less off the top of my head anyway. So 2 hordes of shock troops to hold the center. I had 1 with the halberds and 1 with the plague pots, hopefully, fulfilling very slightly but similar roles, so slightly different. Also had the abomination to stand in between them and make sure that they're rallied as often as possible.
That's the mutant rat fiend.
That's the mutant rat fiend, yep. Also had the tangle to, again, hold down the center, chuck some Bane Charn about and inspire, and also give Aura Fury. That's probably the bit that I could, as we've talked about, change out for potentially a Warlock or whatever. Overall, I think that piece performed very well, especially accompanied by 2 weapon teams. So Fireball 30, sort of. It's really actually stronger than that, because 20 of it's piercing and Fireball sometimes bigger, right near your center line there to protect that sort of center mass. So that was kind of 1 weapon formation, if you like, in the army. I then also had a regiment of tunnel runners with a brew of sharpness and a demon lord which often would accompany one another on a flank and overload that flank. Those 2 units will take off anything in the game if they both charge the same thing. And if they then do that and rotate to face a flank, then, your opponent's in a lot of trouble. So it depends how deployment goes and everything else. But if that does eventuate, that usually leads to successful games. I then had a couple of regiments of spear dudes who just run around and be unit strength 3 and stand on objectives and walk over center lines and do nothing else and stuff like that. They were excellent throughout the whole event. Would take them again a lot. And I had a regiment of warriors. I think I must have had a few points left over. I gave them the plague pots, and against non-cavalry units, they would try to creep through forests and pop the plague pots and just hold things up and deter things for a while. And I found over the course of the event, they did significantly better than an equivalent of Vermintide or whatever would have done, chucking in for their 100 points. And that's about all I can... I think I might have had claw shots as well. It's about all I can remember. I was very, very thin on the characters. Oh, I did also take a Swarm Crier with the Bane Chant loot.
The loot.
So 3 Inspirers, 2 of which rally, and one's rally 2, one's rally 1. Plenty of auras flying about the place to help protect that centre mass and make it super, super solid and very hard to charge. 3 Phalanx units, 2 Plague Pot units. So a lot of... This is very much that counterpunch kind of list that I was more or less describing. It doesn't have a lot of shooting, but it does have a long-range Mind Fog, a little bit of lightning, and a whole heap of breath weapony nastiness if anything comes too close or anything needs to get finished off. And I found those 3 units between the weapon teams and the Tangle. If something got through one of the shock troops, or heaven forbid both of them got taken off, they were usually pretty heavily wounded by that point, and those 3 units can turn on it and just take it off. So, yeah, it was a strong, solid list. It was fairly low unit strength as far as Ratkin goes, despite a few regiments of spear-holding fools that just ran around and added unit strength to stuff. Mm-hmm. But it had a very solid centre and usually one very solid flank and the other one that just tried to hold people up. So sort of when writing the list, I would think of the game plan of those kind of unit sections, if you like. What would you call them? Like a formation almost? Or
yeah,
something like that.
Battle group.
Battle group, yeah, is a popular term at the moment. And deploying in that way on nearly every map. It was Mike Crossman that taught me to focus on your own deployment and where you want to put your own units versus the scenario, more so than trying to worry about where your opponent's putting things and trying to counter their positioning too much. Sometimes you overthink that and then your own deployment suffers. You just sort of focus on... Since I've been focusing more on my own deployment, where are my units going to go in terms of the plan? What's the plan for my army? Forget what my opponent's army's doing. I can sort of counter that once the game starts, but having a solid plan from the start. I suppose the next level is to have that solid plan and then adapt it significantly based on what your opponent does, which you can do sometimes. But yeah, having that sort of that battle group scheme and one solid flank and one weaker flank, and the demon just flying around being a solid boss. And good luck if the 2 shock troops charge you, or the shock troops and the mutant rat fiend, or some combination thereof. It's so hard to get through that center. Even if you break one of the units, the other 2 will charge you, and you've got 30 breath to deal with. Yeah, the center's a nightmare to face off against. There's basically one flank, and your opponent have to really look at barreling up that flank. Otherwise, they're going to be in a tough spot. So that's 2,000 points of what I think is a very solid Ratkin list.
And you've done well with it.
I think you'd be hard-pressed to write one that's significantly better than that.
I don't know. The gunlight one was pretty good.
Yeah, I feel like if you compare that list versus any of the 3 lists that you guys have described, I'm pretty confident you could walk over them with it, if only because of the demon. It had a sort of equivalent level of power across most of the rest of the units. But then that demon's there to just turn any combat extra into favour. It's just because the points are really, really tightly squeezed.
I did forget tunnel runners in my list as well. I had a regiment in there with Jesse's boots.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool. That definitely makes your list significantly better.
More,
yeah, really good unit, the tunnel runners. I'd recommend most Ratkin players bringing one of those units along these days.
Fast and punchy.
They don't have a heap of unit strength, but yeah, it's a list that really needs some fast punch. I'd like to experiment with the Impaler a little bit more, especially in my post-demon life, now that I need to... I've just got a self-imposed restriction on not taking the demon in lists. And
test yourself.
It's certainly not been going as well. I've still won some games and stuff, but I've lost some as well. Not doing as well without old demon face. But
well, You need to learn to walk without the crutch. So give it
That's
a
right.
bit of time, and then your leg muscles will strengthen up, and then you'll be fine.
Yeah, and then I can use the crutch as a bat once I go and put him back on the list again.
Love it.
All right, I think that concludes our Ratkin Army deep dive. Overall, OP.
Yep.
Good job.
Overpowered.
That is so not OP. Does anyone actually think
I'm
Ratkin
just like
OP? I
stirring
don't
you
know.
up.
In all seriousness, like in terms of the meta, I think they're definitely a good army.
They're very good.
I don't think that they're OP, but I think they're
They can do everything.
probably in the top half of power of armies, but they're not. I don't think they quite approach those top few that just have a little bit of an edge on everyone else, which is obviously Abyssal Dwarves and one or two others. Yeah. But no, they're still a sexy list. They're great.
Now, I think they play the scenarios really, really well because of their cheap access to unit strength.
Yep.
And when you've got all that, as well as a couple of really tough units, as well as some versatile units,
And a dragon. Dragon always helps.
and a dragon-ish sort of thing, it just makes them a really well-rounded army.
Yeah, got a bit of everything. They play quite a lot like goblins in a lot of the lists that they play out. Like lots of unit strength, but goblins tend to focus a little bit more on the shooting side of things. You can build Ratkin lists that way, and I think some players would say the strongest possible Ratkin list is, you've got your demon, and then you've got like 4 warlocks and a heap of claw shots to back up all those hordes of shock troops, and maybe that is the best. But investing all that points in lightning, I just don't see as powerful as perhaps other people do. Just as I don't think goblin lists with 9 war machines are actually that good. But, that's just my personal view. I just think there's a lot of ways around that kind of list. It's a bit too one-dimensional for me.
Yep. All right.
Okay, so that'll do for now. If you have any comments or opinions in the negative or opposite, let us know on all of our social medias. Send us an email if you want. I don't think we've gotten any emails. Very unloved. Otherwise, we will probably see you. I guess we won't see you because of the isolation that everyone should be doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'll see you on the interwebs, which is probably where we would have interacted with you to begin with, so no huge difference there. But before I let any of you lovely listeners go, let me say one thing. I know I promised to... Well, not promise. Promise is a strong word. I lied about sending an assassin to anyone who voted Ratkin as the first list. Something tells me that might have skewed the votes somewhat. It's Sellick's fault, not mine, to be fair. He made the voting system such that it was anonymous, so I can't tell who voted for Ratkin. Sorry. That's my excuse. I can't send you your assassin. But I tell you what, first listener to share this episode and say something rad about Ratkin, and only the first, because I've only got a limited number of assassins, only a couple of dozen available. I'll send out a fully painted assassin to the first person to do that, and that's the truth this time.
All right.
Can we just put a hashtag Ratkin on that first post?
Okay, so the person who comments, they need to have hashtag Ratkin.
Sounds good. Hashtag Ratkin, sharing direct Misfire, the beautiful Ratkin army list, which we might as well give up on doing army reviews now because this has been the best one.
No.
Right? Don't want to peak too early, do we? Oh, it's too late for that.
No, we're just getting started. It's going to get a whole lot better. That's what happens when you go first. Anyway, thanks guys for joining us, talking about rats, and thanks everyone for listening. Hopefully you're staying safe and not getting the Rona and keeping everyone else safe that is vulnerable.
All right, guys.
We'll see you soon.
See ya.
Bye.
The revolt and breakout was a maelstrom of blood, fear, teeth, and gore. When they turned on their masters and creator, they showed no mercy. Thousands of abyssal dwarfs died as the vast pack boiled through the halls on its way deeper into the earth. Unknown to their overlords, the Ratkin had been preparing for this moment for years. Miles and miles of new tunnels had been burrowed away from the abyss, far away in an escape route that would expedite the flight of new species of evil. Somewhere they could form their own destiny and plot revenge on the wickedness that had spawned them. More than a century after the Exodus, the Ratkin are a menace that have plagued many of the civilized lands. Tales of savage beasts, of arcane magics and bizarre contraptions all marching to war. Names have attached themselves to the rumors like moths to a flame. The Scourge, Underkin, the Swarm, Skitterfangs. The Ratkin have learned from their masters. They have built their own battle engines, having stolen the knowledge from their war factories of the dwarves and fashioned them into their own image. They have learned about cruelty and suffering firsthand as they watched from the shadows as slaves. They saw the ironcasters in their forges blending machine, flesh, and magic to construct lethal artifacts of war.
Thank you for tuning in with my team. Make sure you follow on Facebook and Twitter. Yes, indeed, more than a game, it's a lifestyle. Yes, sir. Hope you realize that the math hammer doesn't work. We give the people what they desire. Australian War Gaming Podcast, direct Misfire. You don't want to miss a thing. Yeah, we got plenty more. If you're ready, let's go. Stay tuned, that's for sure. Hey.
Awesome, we did it.